two activists who brought a camera into the Albany International Airport while they passed out flyers. Now, it led to a heated dispute over First Amendment rights. Beth Wortman has our top story. Beth?
Hi, Benita. Well, as you'll see in the video clip, an airport spokesman tries to stop these activists from their mission, but a sheriff's deputy steps in.
Messages that reflect the truth about our government, our politicians, and the future of America. With so many in stock, there's one perfect for you. Visit us today at libertystickers.com. Again, that's libertystickers.com. Do your part. Your voice is important. Let it be heard.
You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, because you can handle the truth.
What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, where you'll find out what the Fukushima's going on.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It's Monday, May 21st, 2018, start of a brand new week of utter insanity coming out of Washington, D.C. and other places around the world here. Our phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Mike is in the control room, ready to answer the phone, put you on the air with your comments and questions. So let's get right on into it. The global outrage over what Israel did a week ago in the Gaza Strip is continuing unabated. It is a public relations nightmare for Israel, and the way they're trying to handle it basically shows how arrogant they are, how insincere they are, how remorseless they are, and really does raise the bar for chutzpah. Apparently, 3 Gazans have died of wounds sustained during the May 14th clashes, bringing the total death toll up to 114. And the Palestinian side is accusing the Israeli army of using ammunition that is internationally forbidden. And they were. They were using these expanding bullets that basically fold open on impact to maximize the amount of damage and death. So the rallies in Gaza and also in the West Bank started on March 13th. They're demanding the world's recognition of the Palestinians' right of return, guaranteed by the United Nations, and the lifting of an 11-year blockade on the Gaza Strip by Israel. So, Israel Public Secretary Minister Gilad Erdan basically came on, and this is what I mean by a really bad response to the PR crisis, said that there's no difference between killing the Palestinians in Gaza and killing Nazis in World War II. Yeah, there's a real big difference. The Palestinians are caged up. They don't have weapons other than rocks and slingshots. And the Israelis were in fortified positions 100 meters away with U.S.-made sniper rifles and illegal ammunition. It is a little bit different. But anytime Israel gets into a public relations mess, what do? They bring back the Nazis. They bring back the Holocaust. They talk about Hitler this and Hitler that. And it's inevitable. And, whatever it is that happened back in World War II, happened before the vast majority of us was even born. It is completely inapplicable to what is going on in Israel and Palestine today. Israel has overplayed that card way too much. And there's an article out of Middle East Monitor saying, Israel's premature celebration, Gazans have crossed the fear barrier. And I've actually talked about this once before. Your brain is not electrical. Obviously, it can be stimulated electrically, but it's mostly driven by chemicals, neurotransmitters. And there is a specific neurotransmitter for the fear reaction, but it can become exhausted. And it's not a case of people being courageous and brave all of a sudden. They're simply burned out. They can't feel fear any longer, and after that, all that is left is rage and anger. And according to this article from Middle East Monitor, it looks like the Gazans have crossed that line. Despite all the bloodshed, the deaths, and the wounding, the Gazans refuse to back down. Israel can't make them afraid anymore. which is why I'm sure Israel will concoct some reason to come on in and bomb Gaza yet again. But there's another article also from Middle East Monitor saying Israel's occupation mindset and lust to kill has to be ended because it is the single greatest cause of disquiet in the Middle East right now. I think the Middle East would be pretty much calmed down, just doing business, selling their oil or selling whatever it is they sell, and they'd get along with each other if Israel wasn't always out there causing trouble left, right, up, down, north, and south. Now, a lot of people are talking about how the Gaza massacre exposes the Western hypocrisy on Russia's annexation of Crimea, because Trump's decision to relocate the American embassy to Jerusalem endorses Israeli claims to the whole of Jerusalem as the undivided capital of the Jewish state, even though it's been declared a shared international city by the United Nations. And then you have, on the other hand, the condemnation of Russia's annexation of Crimea, which didn't actually happen. The Crimean people voted to leave Ukraine following the U.S.-backed coup d'etat that drove Yanukovych from power and put in President Chocolate Poroshenko. And then they voted to merge with the Russian republics, and that's what actually happened. And the U.S. denounced the move and refused to recognize it, expressing their concern for the territorial integrity of Ukraine, that it couldn't or shouldn't be violated. And yet down there in Israel, the territorial integrity of Palestine doesn't seem to be an issue. Neither does the territorial integrity of Syria, because there's a move now in Congress to officially recognize Israel's annexation of the Golan. And every time the United States displays more hypocrisy or another double standard, they undermine their own credibility in the eyes, not just of the American people, but the people of the world. All right, we're going to do a shout out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining the network. Now, Kuwait came up with a draft resolution in partnership with the Palestinian Authority. They're headed to the United Nations Security Council this week, seeking the creation of an international force in the Gaza Strip to prevent further Israeli attacks on the area. It's an absolute slam dunk guarantee that Nikki Haley will veto it in the Security Council, at which point they will take the resolution to the General Assembly, where it'll pass overwhelmingly, like the previous one that called Israel's actions in the Gaza Strip wholly inappropriate. And unfortunately, while the General Assembly has no legal authority to do anything about it, it'll be a symbolic victory for the Palestinians and another slap in the face for Israel and Donald Trump. Now, there's a very alarming story coming out of IMMC.org, and it's basically saying that during this attack on the Palestinians, arms manufacturers use the opportunity to test out new technology to basically demonstrate their new products. That may even include those unfolding bullets. Now, Andrew Feinstein is the executive director of Corruption Watch Great Britain and author of The Shadow World Inside the Global Arms Trade. So this is a guy who knows about where the weapons are going, where they're coming from. And apparently some new things were being tested on the Palestinians. Now, apparently, over the weekend, Israeli police employed extreme violence in Haifa against Palestinian citizens of Israel demonstrating in support of the Gaza protesters. They just went on in and just whacked them up real good here. And basically, Avigdor Lieberman is out there inciting more violence against the Palestinian lawmakers. Palestinians who are in the government of Israel trying to support the rights of the Palestinians. And Lieberman is saying they shouldn't be criticizing the police for what happened in Haifa. And Lieberman has previously called for the beheading of Palestinian citizens of Israel who he accuses of being disloyal to the self-described Jewish state. So this guy's got a real Henry VIII mentality going for him here. Now, the good news is a large humanitarian aid convoy from Egypt has reached the Gaza Strip. They're apparently going to open one of the border crossings and let people go back and forth. And even though Egypt has been working with Israel to keep Gaza contained, I guess what happened a week ago was even too much for President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi to stand idly by. So they send in a bunch of material to try and ease some of the suffering there. And apparently Sisi has issued directives to keep the Rafah land border crossing open through the month of Ramadan. Now, over in Great Britain, we've been talking about the Labor Friends of Israel. It's a little subgroup inside the parliament, and some of the members, also disgusted by what happened a week ago, have just backed away and said, we don't want to be supporters anymore. We don't want to be part of the Labor Friends of Israel. One of them actually asked for their name to be removed from the website of the supporters of the Labor Friends of Israel. Another Labor MP is calling on the colleagues to say, it's time to reassess your ties to the Labor Friends of Israel. Because right now, Israel's brand is in bad, bad shape, and people are distancing themselves. This was a bad move. Trump's moving the embassy was a bad move. Moving it on the day of the Nakba was a bad move. And then Israel's massacre down there at the fence, they were all bad moves. And maybe Israel was trying to provoke a third intifada so they could justify killing more Palestinians. But in the eyes of the world, it's definitely not worked out for them. Over in Morocco, 10,000 Moroccans held a protest against the U.S. Jerusalem embassy move, shouting death to Israel. They took to the streets of Casablanca on Sunday, and they carried Palestinian flags and placards that read Al-Quds, Palestine's eternal capital. Now, over in New York, there's a New York school that decided to have a moment of silence for the dead people of Gaza. And not surprisingly, Jewish parents just got into a tizzy. How dare you do that? And they're calling up the school and saying whoever was responsible for this idea needs to be fired, and how dare you show sympathy and support for the people of Gaza. Now, over in Turkey, Erdogan is out there with the rhetoric again, saying Israeli actions would put Nazis to shame. And he's basically talking, he's joining the call for some kind of international force to be deployed to protect Palestinians in Gaza from Israeli attacks. And he's urging the United Nations to investigate the killings on the Strip's borders. Well, the Security Council resolution to conduct an investigation was vetoed by Nikki Haley, but the United Nations Human Rights Council, which is not subject to a U.S. veto, is going ahead with one right now. Erdogan went on to say children of those being subjected to torture in concentration camps are now attacking Palestinians with methods that would put Nazis to shame. And he's absolutely right. He's absolutely, absolutely right. I mean, there doesn't seem to be much difference between the Gaza Strip and the Warsaw Ghetto. They're both basically penned in to hold a specific ethnic group captive and away from the rest of society. They're subjected to economic limitations here. Story coming out of Middle East Monitor, again, how with the move of the embassy to Jerusalem, the United States has lost its role as a mediator in the Middle East. Trump made it look very obvious that the United States stands with Israel, so the United States cannot go on into the Middle East and act as a mediator between Israel and anybody else, because they know that the United States is no longer impartial or objective, if they ever actually were. But they've definitely lost it now. Another story coming from Al Jazeera, memo to Israel, Lebanon is not Hezbollah, Gaza is not Hamas. And they're responding to Israel's latest public relations move to say that everybody in Lebanon is a Hezbollah terrorist and everybody in Gaza is a Hamas terrorist, and that's why it's okay to shoot them. But Hezbollah is a small group. They don't represent the entire population of Lebanon. Lebanon has a civil government. Hamas happens to be, by default, the civil government of the Gaza Strip, and they're trying to function like one, but not everybody works for Hamas. But Israel's trying to blur the lines there to create a sense of otherness, where those are the other and they're bad, therefore it's okay to kill them. Now, here's where it gets almost laughable. Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman on Friday responded to the fact that much of the world's corporate media has actually condemned what happened in Gaza a week ago. And he's basically blaming it on Muslim advertising revenue. And he's saying the only reason these news outlets are covering what happened in Gaza is that 90% of all advertisements come from the Muslim world. Now, that's nowhere near being true, and we know Israel's influence over the world's corporate media is usually ironclad. But interestingly enough, we're seeing a lot of these Jewish people in the media coming on out and saying this really did go over the line, that they can't in good conscience support this. I think I read you excerpts from one of the articles last Friday. You know, how do Jews sleep at night? And it was written by a Jewish author. So Israel did cross a line here. And they've got a public relations nightmare on their hands, which means in the coming weeks, our cable channels are going to be filled with movies about Hitler and the Holocaust, Inglourious Bastards, and World War II in general. Just try and regain their victim status. But I think after what happened a week ago, Israel has lost their victim status. Nobody's going to go back to thinking the Israelis are poor, helpless victims who need our money and our weapons to save themselves from extermination at the hands of those evil Arabs. I think what happened last Monday was Israel's equivalent of the Amritsar massacre in India, which signaled the beginning of the end of British colonial rule. Up in Afghanistan, well, actually, the guy himself was at a U.S. Navy Department briefing, and he made this claim. This guy, U.S. Marine Corps Commandant General Robert Neller, shocked everybody by saying, "We are the Mujahideen." He's claiming that American forces and their Afghan partners are the Mujahideen in Afghanistan now. So he's saying it's a holy war, ignoring the fact that the U.S. was backing the original Mujahideen that drove out the Soviet Union. So let's take a look down here in Syria. The Syrian army has now liberated southern Damascus. ISIS continues to withdraw. And apparently back on the 19th, 2 days ago, the Syrian Arab Army and the remaining ISIS militants reached a temporary ceasefire in the area. And yesterday, a number of buses entered the area, hinting ISIS was ready to surrender. And ISIS members started withdrawing from the area. So the Syrian government is not celebrating just yet, because the U.S. has repeatedly used a strategy of temporarily withdrawing their proxies from an area in order to retrain and re-equip them and then send them back in. But overall, it does look like Assad has won this war, which is why I think we can look forward to another false flag chemical weapon attack to be blamed on Assad, followed by an immediate attack by the United States. And this time they'll go for Assad himself, because the American people are getting sick and tired of all of this nonsense. Apparently, the U.S.-backed Syrian Democratic Forces are resorting to kidnapping for ransom to obtain more money for more weapons and more supplies over in northeastern Syria. And they're arresting civilians for basically made-up reasons. and asking for a hefty amount of money for their release. So that's the kind of people the United States is backing over there in Syria. Apparently, at a former al-Nusra facility in Syria, U.S. anti-tank missiles, TOW missiles, have been discovered. And we're going to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back after these few words.
Corporate media dominates the American opinion. Finding independent voices that counter this avalanche is becoming increasingly difficult. With the endless corruption running rampant throughout our government, independent voices are needed more than ever to battle the offensive against our freedoms and liberties. As a listener of RBN, no one understands this concept better than you. Now it's up to you to do your part. The time has come for you to take action and begin broadcasting the truth to hundreds or thousands of people every month. Sound impossible? Quite the contrary. With pointed slogans from LibertyStickers.com, you can reach countless sleeping Americans unaware that they live in a real-life wonderland. LibertyStickers.com has a huge inventory of political bumper stickers and messages that reflect the truth about our government, our politicians, and the future of America. With so many in stock, there's one perfect for you. Visit us today at LibertyStickers.com. Again, that's LibertyStickers.com. Do your part. Your voice is important. Let it be heard.
As a listener of RBN, you're surely concerned about being informed and being ready for whatever may come. Please consider the following questionnaire as a soul-jarring wake-up call. If you answer no to more than 2 of these following questions, you probably aren't going to make it through any major disruption in our country. The questions were compiled by people that have been there. Are you really ready? Do you own your own firearm for the primary defense and protection of you and your loved ones? Have you ever been professionally trained to stand against life-threatening behavior? Have you ever practiced enough to fire 500 rounds during a 2 to 4 day time frame, day and night? Can you load, unload, fire, and clear a jam in total darkness? Have all the adults in your household been professionally trained? Are you, life and death, comfortable with your abilities with pistol, revolver, shotgun, and rifle? Are you aware that everything that you do to prepare for an emergency is a waste of time, money, and energy? If you haven't honed your abilities to their highest level to protect and keep what you have? Do you have the repair parts that will most likely be needed for each of your firearm, and do you have the ability to install those parts? Could you completely clean every firearm you own? Are you aware that your body won't go where your mind hasn't been? In other words, without proper training, followed by regular practice, you probably will not win a gunfight. Well, how did you measure up? Take the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to start correcting your deficiencies by receiving your Commander Lifetime Membership with Front Sight Firearms Training Facility. A one-time donation to RBN for $500 will give you a Commander Lifetime Membership at Front Sight as a tremendously huge thank you bonus. See details on RBN's webpage to make it happen. The clock is ticking. You had better be ready before it happens.
When all this twisted steel was swept away, did these remaining holes reveal what's really happened?
And aloha America, welcome back to our show here. Israel has started shelling Hezbollah positions in southern Syria. So once again, Israel is just shooting at everybody around there. Technically, what's going on in Syria is none of Israel's concern, but they are shelling Hezbollah positions in southern Syria right now. They shelled the village of Tulul al-Humar, south of Quneitra, and explosions were heard in Deir ez-Zor military airport in eastern Syria. Local sources in the area say the explosions are believed to have been caused by Israeli attacks in the area. No comment yet officially from either Syria or Israel. Okay. All right. Now, I mentioned this before, but it's worth mentioning again. Florida Representative Ron DeSantis is out there pushing a measure in the Congress for U.S. recognition of Israel's sovereignty in the Golan Heights. Now, Israel annexed the Golan all the way back in, I think it was 1981, but it was not recognized internationally and not even by the United States. But Israel wants to keep the Golan. They want all that oil and gas. They want Lebensraum, if you want. Grabbing the Golan is part of the Eretz Israel Grand Plan. They want the Israel described in the Torah, from the Nile to the Euphrates. So DeSantis is definitely on board with that. I hope the measure fails. It's only going to inflame the region that much more. More and more people in Saudi Arabia are asking, have you seen Mohammed bin Salman? Because he's not been seen in public since the April 21st attack on his palace in Riyadh. And there were reports that he was shot at least twice. And if bin Salman is in fact dead, it's going to create a power vacuum, because the older King Solomon isn't functioning all that well. And there are going to be a lot of people vying for that throne. Meanwhile, a dissident Saudi prince, Prince Khalid bin Fardan, is out there saying it's time for a coup d'etat to seize power. And that would tend to reinforce the idea that Mohammed bin Salman actually did die in the attack. Let's go to the phones here. Dustin in New Jersey. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
There we go, the oil fields then.
Yep.
There's a coup there. Oh man, the oil would be $200 a barrel right off the bat.
Yep.
You know, because of uncertainty. Mike, I wanted to actually bring that up because he's been doing the rounds. All of a sudden, he disappeared after that. Maybe a coup, maybe not, but haven't seen him since, right?
Nope, nobody has.
And hey, Mike, I was scared for you on Friday. Did you hear those reports about, was it the geothermal plants? And how do you say that? Hilo?
It's south of Philo. It's closer to Puna. And somebody is trying to fan up an unwarranted hysteria because this geothermal plant used pentane as a heat transfer fluid. It would go basically down in the ground, come on back up. It's heated. It drives the turbines that drive the generators, and then it just recycles forever. It's actually a very good little system. But the pentane has been removed from the area. And no, even if all of it was still there and exploded, it would not create a tsunami that would swamp the entire Hawaiian island chain. What would swamp the entire Hawaiian island chain is if a big chunk of the south flank of Kilauea broke off and fell into the ocean. And geologists, oceanographers have discovered evidence. This has happened many times in the past, at least 70 identified incidents stretching back millions of years. So that's the only way the rest of the islands would be in trouble, other than the fact that the VOG and now the Lays can get blown up this way if the trades collapse.
And then I'm switching gears back onto Syria, Mike. Did you hear the report of the Latakia coming under drone attack just like not too long ago, half an hour?
No, I must have missed that one.
That's in Haiyan. Was that Latakia province, I guess?
Yes.
They think they shot some of them down, so I don't know if it's over yet, but it might still be going on, where the terrorists, so-called, terrorists, that are flying in drones with explosives on them, which is amazing how they can manage to do that with these little drones, putting explosives on them, without help.
Well,
the
drones aren't so little. Anyway, listen, I'm going to put you on hold. Don't hang up. I'm going to come right back to you after these few words from our sponsors. All right, I still got another minute here. I got to change that clock. But if you heard just a little while ago, I was reporting on this story where Israel is shelling Hezbollah positions in South Syria, and explosions are being reported in Deir ez-Zor. This might be another attack underway. And I wouldn't assume that terrorists are using these drones because we know that Israel likes the drones. And they've got a lot of them. All right, now we're going to go to commercial break here, and we'll be right back with Dustin after these words from our sponsors. And I'm still not hearing the music.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
Homeowners, if your lender has gone out of business or sold your transaction to another lender or servicer, you may be the victim of a wrongful foreclosure, resulting in the loss of your home. If you've already lost your home, are in foreclosure, or even in good standing, you can challenge the mortgage transaction's illegal issue, and your property can be restored to you, and your foreclosure can be stopped or reversed, and the mortgage transaction declared unenforceable. State laws, U.S. title codes, the Uniform Commercial Codes, and U.S. Supreme Court rulings have upheld that defective mortgage documentations can reverse or stop foreclosures and enforce property title claims in favor of the homeowner. We are having successes in stopping the process of foreclosure, the enforcement of the foreclosure judgments, the sale of property, and evictions after the sale. We are not attorneys, and we don't give legal advice. We are a professional team of legal researchers, providing forensic mortgage audits and expert witnesses. We have the knowledge to produce the evidence and enforce laws regarding your legal issues. We've been in business for 12 years without a complaint. Consultations are free, and we provide a free title search to confirm if your mortgage has legal defects. Please call 855-253-3748. 855, the number 2, keep it today.
This is too good to be true, except this time it is real. 100%. No joke. How about a $25,000 membership to Front Sight Firearms Training Facility as a thank you bonus for a one-time donation to RBN of only $500? It is a Commander lifetime membership with no yearly fees or dues. The training is free for the rest of your life with over 50 different classes. Then leave it to your designated beneficiary. You provide the approved firearm, holster, ammo, eye, and ear protection. Many features and bonuses are included, more than you would ever expect or believe. This is the ultimate graduation present, wedding gift, etc., etc. See the details. Go to RBN's webpage and frontsight.com to make it happen. May 5th is the last day you will hear this offer on this radio network. Help keep RBN alive. Tell 5.
Without the right accessories, any guy can be off the mark. Whether you've invested thousands in your arsenal or you own a single trusted firearm, a visit to AROutfitting.com is in order. It's one of the finest online selections of tactical optics and AR parts and add-ons, like EOTech, quick target acquisition with no peripheral loss. Browse the full range of Nikon scopes and binoculars. AROutfitting.com can illuminate your world with Streamlight gun-mounted lights from keychain to large handhelds up to 1,100 lumens. Find some stability with Battenfield tactical bipods. AROutfitting.com has CMMG gun parts, barrels, assemblies, handguards, part kits, and more. Plus mag-full clips and magazines. I know I've got you excited, so take a breath. Head to AROutfitting.com. The site's super easy to navigate and features a ton of technical info, including links to manuals. We also welcome vendor and manufacturer inquiries. Remember, if you don't see it, we can get it at AROutfitting.com.
We the people, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility. Provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty.
And welcome back to our show here. We're on the line here with Dustin, and I'm sorry for the on-air cough. I forgot to take my local volume down here for the commercial break. So, Dustin, where were we when we went to the commercials?
I was telling you about how, like, there was a attack going on with drones coming from terrorists or unknown attackers on Latakia Air Base, which is in was it Hyman Air Base in Latakia Province, and I don't know if it's still going on, but Mike, this is going to go on for a while. I mean, they like you said, they just cleared out Damascus and stuff, so there's still pockets. So it's going to take, it's still going to take a while, but they're running out of resources. That's so clear to see. They got to eat. They need ammo. That's why they found the TOW missiles without a TOW. Either they took off with the TOW unit itself, or it never showed up, which means they're having a hard time getting other things.
Yeah, but we know that the United States is airlifting supplies to them. That's why they have all this American and British equipment. Of course, again, we're hearing these stories about how some of these so-called rebels are now resorting to kidnapping and holding for ransom to get more money. Part of the problem is they were stealing Syria's oil and selling that off through Turkey as well to get more money for the war.
And Mike, I wanted to talk about, you heard of the Corbett report, James Corbett?
Oh, yes, I've had him on the show.
You got to get him on, Mike. People got to watch this. You've been talking about it, how the United States, Britain, France, Israel, so they use these, the NGOs like USAID and all. You got to watch the video. It's new. It's the newest one. And Mike, what's sad? We're always saying, they send in these aid groups to help people, and just it's a front to start a revolution and to overthrow the government, to put a puppet in. But Mike, isn't it amazing how you see in Syria they cleared out all these areas? Where's the aid now? You don't see it at all coming in from the West, do you?
No, you don't.
Now that tells you all you need to know, because like he said, it's a Trojan horse to bring in regime change or to steal the government or the wealth of the people. And like I said, where's the aid? The only people bringing aid in is Iran, Hezbollah, and Russia. Where's Britain's aid? Where's France and the United States, Israel, and Saudi Arabia's aid to help the people? They're not helping the people.
France,
it is a joke.
France and Great Britain, along with the United States, are spending their money to build more bases inside Syria, and there is a very clear line being formed by all of these bases. So the agenda still appears to be to break Syria up into at least two parts. They're going to whack off the Golan and give that to Israel. They're going to whack off another part and give that to the Kurds. They're going to leave Bashar al-Assad with the desert.
It's just sad, though, like how we could have chosen the right path, and we all chose the wrong path. This country is finished. Our government has created this mess, and took the path down the drain, Mike, at this point. I mean, what a joke.
They have created a mess. They have created a mess, and the rest of us have to live with it. Anyway, Dustin, I'm going to let you go because I got a lot of news I got to cover here today. So thank you very much for the phone call. Now, apparently, U.S.-backed militias up in Manbij in northern Syria have put down a popular uprising. Apparently, in that city, people in the town went on a general strike in opposition to the Syrian Democratic Forces' forced recruitment in their region. In other words, the U.S.-backed militia was simply grabbing kids and throwing them into a uniform and handing them a gun and saying, you have to join us fighting against the Syrian government. And they really didn't like that. For lack of a better word, it's a draft. And so the people of Manbij went on a general strike, just refused to go to work, refused to do anything. And the so-called Syrian Democratic Forces put down this popular uprising, apparently rather brutally. Now, last week we were reporting on how Turkey is refusing to give Afrin back to Syria. And they're now saying that Afrin should be allowed to self-govern, that there's a local governing council that's been set up, and we're going to respect Afrin's right to choose its own course. And now we're finding out militants are plundering public assets and transferring the material to Turkey. And this is al-Nusra, and they're looting infrastructure in western Idlib. They're literally plundering railway lines and power cables for the steel and the copper. And the railway was a very important communication link between Al-Rouj Plan and Idlib city, and saying that people are very angry especially in Idlib, that the rail line has now been cut. So al-Nusra is taking the steel and copper into Turkey to sell on the marketplace there. We've had a big problem with copper thieves out here. There's a lot of metal up there, and when copper prices were up, power lines were being cut down and just taken. There's this antique World War II VLF radio that's over in Haiku Valley. It was used on a location for Lost. And the coil forms for the transmitter are still in that building. And it's an amazing thing to see. And I'm sorry that the Hawaiian Homelands Association is not, they don't consider the building important because they want to restore the heiaus and temples and things like that. But for anybody who loves old radio, the building was amazing when we used it as a location. It's deteriorated further since. But even when we were there, the coil forms were completely empty because the copper wire that had wrapped around them had all been stolen. So it is a way of raising money. Illegally, but it is. The AUMF 2018 bill would replace the 2001 and 2002 versions. This is an absolute giveaway of war authority to the president. And it looks like this one will not have a sunset date in it. Congress, claiming that they're overburdened, is abandoning their constitutional duty to decide when and where this country goes to war. And the Pentagon is saying, oh, it's just too much bother to go to Congress and get an approval for each one of these. I mean, look how many wars we're in. Can you imagine if we had to go to Congress for every single one of these? What a fantastic waste of time. And of course, Congress doesn't want to be seen voting for more war because we're coming up on a midterm election, and they know that voting in favor of war is now an election loser. So in order to protect their re-election chances or their election chances, they just abandoned the Constitution. They abandoned that part of the Constitution that says only Congress can declare war, and they've handed a carte blanche to Donald Trump and his successors to just start a war wherever they feel like. Now that sounds suspiciously to me like a dictatorship handed to the White House on a silver platter. Over in South Korea, remember we were talking about how the continuing military drills between South Korea and the U.S. and the U.S. flying of nuclear-capable B-52 bombers along the coastline of North Korea had really thrown a monkey wrench into the possibility of peace talks. And somehow or other, Moon Jae-in got snookered into going along with this. Well, he's figured out he's been had, and he's brought pressure on the United States and says the joint training exercise is canceled. We're not going to do it anymore. We're trying to steady this situation down. And the U.S. has also canceled the nuclear drills to try and get the peace talks going, except there's another fly in the ointment. Trump is now considering simply dropping out of the planned North Korea summit. And the article says Trump is consulting with his allies on whether or not going forward is a good idea. Well, I'll tell you right now, being seen as not going forward is going to look bad. It's bad optics right there. Interesting article out of strategicculture.org, Trump the Schlump. Iran nuclear deal is bad, North Korean nuclear deal is good. And they're, again, illustrating how the U.S. government applies different standards to different people, or different nations rather. And it's hard to understand if there is any kind of a cohesive foreign policy at all, or it's simply answering the phone from Netanyahu and following his orders. Now, the United States has laid out 12 demands for a new nuclear deal with Iran. And I don't think Iran is going to go for this. Some of the demands are outrageous. I mean, it starts with a complete shutdown of all uranium centrifuges, that Iran purchase fuel for their nuclear reactors from other countries, But then it goes on to more and more things about the long-range ballistic missiles and how Iran must seek any support for military activity anywhere in the Middle East. In other words, they want Iran to abandon Syria. And I don't think Iran is going to go for that. And at this point, Iran doesn't need to, because the European Union, Russia, and China are in talks with Iran over their new nuclear deal. And the new deal would keep Iran's requirements the same as the P5+1, but would increase the incentives guaranteed by the other powers. Needless to say, the United States was not invited to these talks because the EU, Russia, and China see the U.S. trying to undermine any deal at all in order to open the door to a potential invasion. So what's happening here, both politically and economically, is the U.S. is now being isolated from the rest of the world. The U.S. has conducted itself as the world's indispensable nation. Everybody has to come do business with us. Everybody has to use our dollar. Everybody has to use our SWIFT system. But the world has changed. There are now parallel currencies, parallel systems, and the rest of the world has clearly had enough with the bullying from the U.S. government. And so what's going to happen is Iran is going to make a deal with the EU, Russia, and China, and their economy is going to continue. The U.S. can sanction all they want, but if nobody else is going along with it, all it does is it cuts off the United States from Iranian oil, and it cuts off Iranian marketplaces from products made in the United States. Who's that going to hurt more? I mean, they took a hit over at Boeing with the ban on selling aircraft to Iran. So the United States is genuinely hoisting with its own petard in its handling of Iran and its overuse of sanctions against everybody. And I think the rest of the world is looking at the United States as becoming a pariah, very obviously under the control of Israel, and sharing the guilt for what Israel is doing. And we're not looked up to anymore. We're not seen as a great nation. Not when we kowtow left and right to Israel's every single demand. Down in South America, in Venezuela, they started voting yesterday in an election that was boycotted by the opposition and condemned by the international community, which will probably hand Nicolas Maduro a new mandate. Now, the language used in this article, which appeared in AFP, is skewed. They describe Maduro as deeply unpopular. Well, if he's deeply unpopular, how is it he wins elections? Because unlike the 2016 election here in the United States, Venezuela allows international observers to monitor their elections. I think what's going on in Venezuela is they understand the hardships they're going through are not Maduro's fault. They've been victims of U.S. intervention and economic warfare going all the way back to the time of Hugo Chavez. And the more the United States pressures Venezuela, the more they're going to stand by their leader. That's what's going to happen. Now, the U.S. has already announced they will not recognize the Venezuela election result, and they're already out there saying their goal is to target corrupt regime officials and not the people of Venezuela. We don't want to damage the country in a way that makes it difficult to repair after democracy is restored. That is a code phrase for we're going in to invade and overthrow the government and install an obedient puppet ruler. That's what that is code for. Story coming out of Information Clearinghouse. Sources in Russian law enforcement apparently relying on data from closed communication channels with the defense ministries of China, Pakistan, and Afghanistan say that there is now an operation basically to prepare a large-scale hybrid offensive against Russia through Tajikistan and Uzbekistan. And this planning phase is in the final phase. All they need is an excuse here. This is a mistake. This is definitely a big mistake. Last week, we reported on how the Russian Navy announced they were going to keep their forces in the Mediterranean to guard Syria's coast against ISIS. What they were really doing was sending a message to the United States, we're not leaving so that you can invade from the sea. And now it appears that Russia's Navy, which has a base in Syria, now has a permanent naval presence in the Mediterranean. And they're planning 102 expeditions of ships and submarines for the balance of this year. They'll sail down there, they'll go through a rotation, then they sail home, and they're replaced by the next expedition. This is a very alarming story. This is coming from Air Force Times. And they're talking about, this is the Air Force Secretary, who's out there talking about the JSTARS Battlefield Management and Control Aircraft. This is the update to what were called the TACAMOs. And basically saying they're very vulnerable. They're vulnerable to being shot out of the sky during the opening salvo of a war with Russia or China. This is coming from Heather Wilson. Now, as part of its proposed 2019 budget, the Air Force wants to cancel the program to recap the E-8C Joint Surveillance Target Attack Radar System aircraft, which previously sought to buy 17 new Boeing 707 planes to replace its old inventory. Some lawmakers aren't buying that plan. We'll be right back after these few words.
Okay, nurse, let's get this man to the ER stat.
Right away, doctor.
We see this every day. Heart attack or angina pain due to blocked and clogged arteries. Chelation can remove obstructions or blockages from arteries and help avoid painful and expensive surgery. Now there's Angioprim. It's a liquid oral chelation product that you take with juice. You start to feel the results fast. Angioprim increases blood flow all over the body, and that means more energy and strength to take on the day with less aches and pains. 60 years of research has gone into chelation, and Angioprim is the result. A safe and easy way to unblock your veins and arteries from buildup that slow circulation.
Paging Dr. Jones. Please report to the emergency room right away.
Log on now for a special radio offer from Angioprim. That's angioprim.com/radio. ANGIOPRIM. Angioprim.com/radio or call 877-882-7221. That's 877-882-7221.
Did you know that neither the American Medical Association nor the American Bar Association were established to benefit the American people? Have you recognized that in our country, healthcare has little to do with health, and that our court system has nothing to do with justice? The priests of both medicine and law have been incentivized to implement a dark agenda on behalf of the Bilderbergers and their ilk. To protect ourselves and our progeny, we need to take a much closer look at how these two giant industries really work. Join me, Al Whitney, on In Defense of Humanity, Saturdays at 7 p.m. Central, as we expose the matrix and learn how not to consent to our own destruction.
Many people write us about their experience with Extendivite. Allow me to read you some from Amazon.com. This product is superb. I have been taking it for about a year now, and I can feel my cardiovascular system run like a Swiss watch. I definitely recommend this product for anyone that has high cholesterol, high blood pressure, and heart palpitations, A+. It's potent, but it works. I have been waking up for the past 3 years with numb hands, and a week into using Extendivite, my numb hands seem to have cleared up. My circulation was off, and now it's back on track. So I'm happy. I feel so energized, and I have my husband on it now. My mother-in-law has cholesterol problems, so I bought her a bottle as well. Thank you so much. Love the product. Tell us your story. Get Extendivite today. Call 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
When all this twisted steel was swept away, did these remaining holes reveal what's really happened?
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And you know, the U.S. government spends a huge amount of money on the military. And over at the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, which monitors global military spending, they've come out with their latest report. And to nobody's surprise, the U.S. is up at the top of the list with more spending than the next 7 biggest spenders combined. According to the report, in 2017, the U.S. spent $610 billion, that's with a B, while China spent $228 billion. The rest of the list engaged in rather minuscule amounts of spending by comparison. Russia spending $66 billion, Great Britain spending $47 billion, Japan spending $45 billion. Now, on the basis of military spending, we should have the greatest military on earth. We don't. We've got a lot of expensive junk. And there are a lot of people in Washington, D.C. Crying wolf over how the U.S. military is being stripped to the bone. And the U.S. must rebuild its military capability. Well, they've got the money to do it. So if it's not being done, there's a problem with the system. We're going to take a phone call now from Peter in Los Angeles. Aloha, Peter. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, before you get too far away from the J-Stars story, J-Stars was like kind of like an AWACS for ground attack.
Okay.
And what it would do it would fly, like for instance in the Persian Gulf War, Desert Storm, it would fly over northern Saudi Arabia, and since radar is line of sight, it would focus the radar into southern Iraq, and we get an idea of all their, ground convoys and ground movements and all that. But because of the curvature of the Earth and all that, and it can't be too high because it loses a little clarity, and also it becomes more vulnerable the higher it goes. It has to be relatively close because of the curvature of the Earth to what they're looking at, not more than like 100, 120 miles or something. So like an S-200, an S-300, an S-400, and the new S-500 would easily be able to reach out and knock that down. So it's great against non-peers or, total air supremacy situations like we had in Desert Storm or something. But against a peer, forget it. It just doesn't work. But I was calling about the Iran deal, Mike, and how it's what you were talking about, how it's basically accelerated the destruction of the U.S. alliance system.
Yes.
You talked last week about how the companies in Europe can obey or not obey.
Okay, well, listen, Peter, we got to do a break for station identification. Stay on the line. I'm going to come right back to you after these few words.
Tired of being lied to by mass media? It's growing more and more apparent today that news is received less and less through standard media outlets. Even with a growing audience every day, RBN is beginning to direct more efforts into social media. Social media and the use of the internet is fast becoming the primary source of people for news, regardless of demographic. RBN has set out to provide some of the best news on the internet through republicbroadcasting.org, and also has begun to use the tools to our advantage by way of social media. Republic Broadcasting is now operating a Facebook page to function as yet another avenue to have our collective voice reach new audiences across not only America, but across the globe as well. The Facebook page features not only news, but also an RBN player to listen to our broadcasts. Get involved by visiting facebook.com/Republic Broadcasting and liking our page and share it with your friends and family, because you can handle the truth.
You're listening to Republic Broadcasting Network, because you can handle the truth.
What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. The history the government hopes you never learn. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And we're talking with Peter in Los Angeles. And Peter, I want to back up to the issue of the J-Stars because you're absolutely right. For the last few decades, possibly longer, the United States has been constructing a military that is used against much, much weaker countries. But to go up against a military peer like China, which clearly is building up their military even more than Russia, you're right. Some of these weapons platforms are very vulnerable. Remember that F-117 that actually got shot down over Kosovo because they did not have a total air dominance situation there. The J-Stars are vulnerable to the S-300, S-400, and we've had all these comments about going up against Russia and China, those aircraft carriers, which are very effective against nations with very little military. They're going to be giant floating targets. Now, getting on back to the Iran deal, yes, this situation, both between the moving of the embassy to Jerusalem and the attempted arm twisting of Europe to go along with more sanctions against Iran, has driven a huge wedge between the European Union and the United States. So, yeah, it's short-term gain, long-term consequence.
And Mike, if they won't go along economically, they're not going to go along militarily either.
No.
And so NATO is fragmenting before our eyes. And then we had Trump just, last week, threatening to bring penalties against NATO countries like Germany for not spending enough money. So we've arm twisted them into Afghanistan and places like that. They didn't want to go. We've created all these refugees through our ridiculous policies following Israel and Syria and Libya, and that have flooded their societies. And now we're ruining their companies with trade. It's absolutely it's dissolving like the Wicked Witch of the West with water. Oh, well, I forget about, here's another weapon system, the AC-130.
Yes.
Remember the helicopter, the C-130 with the 105 millimeter howitzers and all that in it, which we rely on very heavily. It was great against the Taliban Air Force, but it wouldn't last a minute against an Air Force.
Yes.
Any Air Force. But at any rate, and now, by the way, James Corbett has done really good work on this false flag thing you were talking about with Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan and so on. That Gladio, which had been pretty much Operation Gladio, which had been at work in Western Europe and kind of stopped in the early 90s when it was found out about, but has continued unabated in Central Asia for a long time. And the Russians aren't going to put up with it. And you were talking about the other day, some lawmaker or somebody was saying we should bomb Russian infrastructure.
No, it was
a
columnist over at the Washington Times, and said that Kiev should just bomb that bridge Russia just built from the mainland to Crimea.
Are they freaking crazy? I mean, come on. Well, anyways, but not to put a too fine a point on it, this is against our interest. It's against the Iran deal. It not only is accelerating the demise of NATO and the European Union, by the way,
yes.
It's accelerating. It's costing Belgium, France, Britain, Germany, all are heartily against it. So are our adversaries, who we should take every chance to reach a good accommodation with, and resist every opportunity, every impulse we have to confront them. But here, even Britain and Russia and China were for that Iran deal. 300, most of the American citizens polled were for it, and yet and it cost hundreds of thousands of jobs with Lockheed and Boeing, just to name one company, on canceled contracts, and yet we did it for Israel and its lobby that owns us.
Yes,
completely against our every interest that the United States has.
You're absolutely correct.
Yeah,
you're absolutely correct. And I'm starting to think that everybody inside Washington, D.C. is crazy or psychopathic, or they're on prescription antidepressants, because the quality of thinking coming out of the nation's capital is not very impressive, to put it politely.
Mike, when you said something, I think it was talking about the Venezuelan situation with Maduro, and also the Korean accommodations being reached by South Korea, and made the point where we make one sort of set of priorities and principles on one side of the world. Anything with Iran is bad. Blah 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 blah. And the question is, are we allowed to follow our own foreign policy in South America and maybe East Asia? If it's far enough away from Israel, we're allowed to follow our own policy and our own interest, or what?
Well, again, setting Israel aside, our government is dominated by the money people, by the money junkies. It wasn't just Israel that wanted Trump to move the embassy to Jerusalem. It was Sheldon Adelson. And our country has just become ruled by the money. And whoever's got the money to buy the best liars gets what they want. And that's no longer a republic. It's no longer a democracy.
And Mike, how about the stuff that you've been reporting on, like the influence of other people in the elections? We talked about the Israel part of the Russia gate, but now we have other people, Saudi Arabia, all these other people who are involved in our election process. It's completely, none of it's for us.
No,
none of it's for us.
Nope. And of course, it's reciprocal. The United States tinkers with other nations' elections all the time. So that's just the way things are working there. The CIA has a long history of going on into other countries and changing leaders by rigging the elections.
Right, and none of it is ever for like the American citizen or for the good of the people overseas, all that human rights crap that we espouse all the time.
Yeah.
It's never for that. It's always for the money.
It's always
for who owns the congressman and the president.
Yep.
Ah, man.
It's all about natural resources, control of the currency, pipeline rights of way. That's what it's all about. And they're sending the signals. They're going to gin up a reason to attack Venezuela, even though Venezuela has not attacked us. So there's going to be some kind of a false flag. Somebody that's dressed like a Venezuelan is going to come and throw a cream pie in Trump's face or something.
How do you dress like a Venezuelan?
I have no idea. I've never been to Venezuela. I wouldn't know.
Thanks, Mike.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go, and we're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are rejoining the network. Over in Great Britain, there's been a new revelation, and this goes back to that whole Sergei Skripal case. And I understand one of the Skripals has now been released from the hospital. It's a miracle cure after being exposed to 100 grams of the world's deadliest nerve agent. So goes the story. I still think it was actually seafood poisoning at that lunch spot where they had, because the original report said other people were affected. Okay, the entire basis for the claim that this had to be Russia was the claim that only Russia produced this Novichok. It could only have come from Russia. Well, a new report coming out of Germany has revealed that NATO has had Novichok, the formula for it, since the 1990s. Apparently, a Russian defector decades ago brought a sample of the material and it was analyzed. And so all of the NATO nations have the recipe and know how to make this, including probably Porton Down. Let's take another phone call here. Robert in London. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yes. Hello. Good afternoon. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, I hear you.
Last time I called, it was very bad. Very good. Yeah, I'd like to make a comment on Donald Trump's comments, if possible.
Okay.
You repeated his comment. That Britain should buy a lot more F-35s. And, just get the wallet out and buy more aeroplanes. And also it was reported on the local news that Donald Trump had made a comment that people the National Health Service, which is free to local people, if you use free health service, you are a freeloader and shouldn't be allowed, etc. In other words, he wants to bring American-style health service to Britain, etc., to make money, of course.
Yes, of course.
My question to you, a very cynical question to you, is how should I salute Donald Trump? Should it be 2 fingers or a middle finger? That's my question.
I think the answer is glaringly obvious. What Trump was talking about, the National Health Service, he's demanding that they pay more for American prescription medication. Apparently they get a discount because they buy in bulk. But Trump is saying Britain needs to pay more for these pharmaceuticals so that it can work on lowering pharmaceutical prices for the American people, which sounds really good, but I don't think the American people are going to see a lowering of prices. There are actually low-cost pharmaceuticals out there, but the contracts that pharmacies have with the big pharmaceutical corporations literally have a gag rule in there. The pharmacists are not allowed to steer you toward a lower cost alternative. If you ask for generic for those medications whose patents have expired, you can get that. But otherwise, you're expected to pay tourist rates for your medication, and now they want Great Britain to do the same. Now, Great Britain's economy is not doing all that well. None of the economies around the world are doing all that well right now. And Britain's decision to pull back on the number of F-35s that they were buying is based on 2 factors. 1, the price has gone up. The expected price has gone up. 2, they don't really work all that well. In fact, none of the F-35s currently flying are actually combat ready. They're still waiting for necessary systems to be developed and shipped and installed. So they're using them to train F-35 squadrons right now, but that's all they can be used for.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Let you go. Thanks very much.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you for the phone call. We're going to let you go. So let's turn to the domestic politics because there's a lot going on here. The FBI spy inside the Trump campaign has been identified. He's Stephen Halper. Apparently, He works as a college professor, but he's got deep ties to both the FBI and CIA. He was apparently caught up in he was part of a spy operation during the Reagan years to spy on Jimmy Carter. So it looks like this kind of stuff has been going on for a very, very long time. The latest news is that Stephen Halper was still spying on Trump well into 2017. Now, a lot of people are saying this one guy's been identified, but there are indications that there may have been more than one spy inside the Trump campaign. Halper apparently was paid over $1 million by the Obama administration to do all of this. Now, Donald Trump is understandably upset. The intelligence agencies of this country are not supposed to be spying for political gain. Now, the anti-Trumpers are out there saying, well, no, they weren't spying on the campaign. They were looking for evidence of Trump-Russia collusion. They're still trying to kick that dead horse or flog that dead horse. But Trump is out there saying that he is ordering the Department of Justice to investigate the FBI and the CIA and find out whether the spying actually served a legitimate legal purpose or if it was completely political. So the liberals are going ballistic out there right now saying the president can't demand an investigation while he's under investigation. That's obstruction of justice. He should be impeached immediately. This is over at MSNBC with Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski. So I'm starting to see a lot of nervousness come out from some of these people because this thing is reaching a breaking point where somebody is going to come forward and talk because they're going to want to get the best deal that they can. And interestingly enough, over at the Wall Street Journal, which is considered corporate media, but they're refusing to go along with the rest of the corporate media and saying that there's nothing there, the FBI wouldn't do this. And amid the liberal media's meltdown, the Wall Street Journal is refusing to back off its intense pressure to get to the truth about the FBI spying. This is apparently coming down all the way from the editors of the Wall Street Journal. And in the article that the Wall Street Journal put on out, actually President Trump dropped a 3-tweet quote this morning. John Brennan is panicking. He's disgraced himself. He's disgraced the country. He's disgraced the entire intelligence community. He is the one man who is largely responsible for the destruction of America's faith in the intelligence community. That's a pretty accurate assessment out there. Brennan, again, looking nervous, he's out there firing warning shots to Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell in response to Trump ordering a Department of Justice investigation. And Brennan basically came on out and saying that Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell will bear the majority of the responsibility of the harm done to our democracy if they don't stop Trump. So that sounds like somebody who is really running scared right now. See, all these people did all these things in the certain knowledge Hillary Clinton would be president right now, and they would not have to worry about any kind of investigations for anything they did wrong. And now they're scared, and they ought to be. What's that old saying? Don't do the crime if you can't do the time. Judicial Watch has filed a Freedom of Information Act lawsuit against the U.S. Department of Justice and the U.S. Department of State for all records of communications relating to the Uranium One scandal. The suit was filed in the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia back on March 29th. And the reason they did that is that Department of Justice and Department of State refused the previous Freedom of Information Act requests. They're still stonewalling over there. So Judicial Watch wants all the records regarding the company Uranium One and all records of communication sent to and from officials in the offices of the Attorney General and Deputy Attorney General, Office of the Legal Counsel, and the National Security Division. and they want the communications from Hillary Clinton while she was serving as Secretary of State. That may be a little bit more difficult because she was using her private email system in order to evade the preservation of records as required by public records laws. Apparently, new details have been revealed in the shooting of the lobbyist investigating the murder of Seth Rich. Now, after Seth Rich was murdered in 2016, conservative lobbyist Jack Berkman basically paid for a private investigator to try and find the killer. Then in March, Berkman himself became the victim of a mysterious shooting and was hit by an SUV in a parking garage where he was picking up documents from someone he thought was an FBI whistleblower. More about this when we come back from these words from our sponsors.
Many people write about their experience with Extendivite. Allow me to read you a few from Amazon.com. My wife and I both use Extendivite and are very pleased with the results. It has helped to stabilize our blood pressure and to make both of us feel healthier. Good product and good buy. So far, so good. I've been taking Extendivite 3 times a day, only a short while now, but already I've noticed the circulation in my hands and feet improving. They tingle. I like the idea of taking something herbal rather than pills. I take Extendivite 3 times a day, every day. I think this supplement has helped with my increased fitness regime and to lower my blood pressure. Tell us your story. Get Extendivite today. Call 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendivite.
Folks, we're living in a world the likes of which we've never perceived any clearer than we do now. The plan for global governance has been in the works for generations and would have likely been achieved by now, but for the fact that the globalists left open their Achilles heel. With all their tools, Federal Reserve System, fiat currency, no child left behind, and then Common Core education introduced to our schools to dumb us down, vaccines, pharmaceuticals to lobotomize us, GMO foods, insertion of compromised or bought and paid for politicians, judges, mainstream media propaganda, all pieced together like a puzzle designed to ultimately bring the world under submission. But with all their strategy, they forgot one thing: knowledge. And knowledge is power. With knowledge, their bombardment is nullified. Folks, with that, as brilliant and knowledgeable as you've become, among the wisest audience of any radio audience in the world, and you are, I want you to take a moment to reflect and ask yourself, how much of that knowledge did I obtain from Republic Broadcasting Network? How high has my consciousness been raised since I've been a listener? How fast am I now able to discriminate truth from fake news by being a Republic Broadcasting listener? How clear am I now able to see the world since I've been listening to RBN? Ask yourselves those questions, folks. Then ask yourself, what is that knowledge worth to me? Like my morning coffee, how would I survive without it? A voice of truth in a sea of lies. Do we not all need to make sure it survives? Like public broadcasting, we are now finding we can only survive with listener support. Censorship, advertisers being attacked, truth itself being attacked. It's the only way through this. We at Republic Broadcasting humbly ask you to become a supporter. Look at your budget and make a determination of what Republic Broadcasting is worth to you and what you can afford on a monthly basis. Go to republicbroadcasting.org and pledge $20, $30, $40, $50, if possible, $100 a month or more if it's affordable. Click the donate button and become a regular monthly donor. Assure both us and yourself that Republic Broadcasting truth will continue to flow like that morning coffee. The network thanks you.
Well, they're stealing down on Wall Street and in Washington, too. You know, it makes me wonder, what's a guy on Main Street to do? Always tried to be an honest, upstanding kind of guy. I must admit lately, I thought about giving something else a try. Oh, I want to be a pirate. I want to sail the 7 seas, yeah, I want to be a pirate.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're talking about how in the aftermath of the murder of Democratic National Committee staffer Seth Rich in 2016, conservative lobbyist Jack Berkman hired a private investigator to try and find the killer. Then in March, Berkman was the victim of a mysterious shooting and was hit by an SUV in a parking garage where he was picking up these documents from someone he thought was an FBI whistleblower. Well, apparently the investigation is still going on, and using fingerprints, detectives tracked down the suspect. And it turned out to be Kevin Doherty, a man who had actually worked for Berkman on the Seth Rich case, was probably actually spying on him to see what he was getting. And ABC News obtained a copy of a search warrant that shows Doherty bought a rifle and then rented a black Lincoln Navigator on the morning of the shooting and returned it in Boston the next day. So they're building up a case against him, and maybe he'll flip. Or maybe he won't. He knows what happened to Seth Rich. Another person who's gone missing is Joseph Mifsud. This is a university professor and foreign policy expert. He reportedly, supposedly acted as a conduit between the Trump campaign staff and the Russian government during the 2016 election, except that that's now been disproved. But this professor allegedly told an advisor for Donald Trump's campaign that Russia had compromising information on Hillary Clinton. Now he's vanished. He's gone off the grid. He can't be found. His fiancée has not been able to reach him. So I would say get a shovel and start digging in Fort Marcy Park. The wet work is still going on. Let's take a phone call from Dennis in Indiana. Aloha, Dennis. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Oh, hello, Mike. I'm just wondering, is Planned Parenthood an agency that the taxpayers fund? Is it an agency of the government, or is it just considered a private organization?
They're a private organization, but they do get U.S. taxpayer funding.
Right. Okay. I was just wondering that because they're not really an agency of the government.
No.
Like the IRS isn't an agency of the government either.
Right.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I needed to know.
All right. Thank you for the phone call. We're going to let you go. Special Counsel Robert Mueller is now saying that he will wrap up his Trump obstruction probe by September 1st. And this is basically his probe into whether Trump obstructed the Russia inquiry which would be obstruction of justice and impeachable offense. They're dragging this out, trying to drag it into the midterms. And Giuliani is saying, no, it has to be September 1st, so it is not an issue going into the November elections. They'll find some other way to bring it up. The liberal media won't let it go. They'll absolutely keep it out there. You know, Trump may have obstructed justice. He may have done this. He may have done that. Interesting little take on current military defense. This is coming out of Zero Hedge. And the article is titled, How the FBI and CIA Restarted the Cold War to Protect Themselves. And I don't agree that just the FBI and CIA restarted the Cold War. The Cold War was restarted by the military-industrial complex, the neocons, the war hawks, the government in general, wanting to be able to wag Russians at you to get your money in obedience. But apparently, the hope was that we'd be so caught up in following the Cold War that we would stop paying attention to the scandals around the FBI and the CIA. And that really has not worked out very well. That dossier has blown up in their face, and everybody is looking at this, and it's having an effect. Apparently, the GOP is having a record fundraising season, and the Democrats are just not doing well at all. And I know the Democrats are going to rely on the big hitters like Sheldon Adelson to step up and fill the gap. But the DNC has hit a 12-year low. And apparently young people are now shifting more towards conservatism than liberalism. So Hillary's behavior during the campaign of 2016 and since has caused a lot of damage. People are looking at Debbie Wasserman Schultz. They're looking at Nancy Pelosi, who's out there saying it's perfectly okay for the DNC to rig a primary, which obviates the need for a primary. If the primary doesn't matter, why go through all the expense? Well, the people like to feel they're in control, even though they're not. So we'll see what happens in November, but I'll tell you, somewhere between now and then, Trump has got to ram through a nationwide voter ID law, or the Democrats will steal Congress. They've already pledged to raise taxes, and they're going to impeach Trump. We'll be right back after these few words.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
Homeowners, are you in foreclosure, expecting to be served with a foreclosure lawsuit, or suspect your lender has coerced you into an illegal mortgage transaction? A huge number of mortgages made in the last 10 years have legal issues and are possibly defective. State laws and the U.S. Supreme Court have upheld that defective mortgage documents are grounds for foreclosure defense and for counterclaims in favor of the homeowner. If your mortgage has been sold or assigned since closing the loan, it may be defective and you may be paying the wrong party, and the lender may not have standing or the right to foreclose or collect payments under the law. If you would like to know if your mortgage is legal or not, or know if you are paying the right party, we can help. Our initial consultations are free of charge. We are not attorneys. We are legal researchers and work closely with experienced lawyers who know how to help you find the evidence to help you keep your home. Call toll free 1-855-2-KEEP-IT. That's 1-855-2-KEEP-IT today.
Do you worry a lot? If you're forgetful, nervous, moody, or overwhelmed, chances are you're not protecting yourself from the ravaging effects of stress and anxiety. No matter the cause, ongoing stress and elevated levels of the stress hormone cortisol can rob your memory, your health, your quality of life, and your future. Now you can combat the effects of stress and anxiety while improving your memory and recall at the same time with the dietary supplement Calm and Clever. Studies show that the ingredients in Calm and Clever reduce cortisol by as much as 30% in as little as 1 to 2 weeks and increase your ability to recall facts, names, and numbers in 4 to 12 weeks. Calm and Clever was created by scientist Kurt Hendricks, a principal investigator in 2 NIH-funded studies on Alzheimer's disease. Try Calm and Clever for 2 months. You'll feel the difference. Call 1-800-758-8746 or go to calmandclever.com.
Without the right accessories, any guy can be off the mark. Whether you've invested thousands in your arsenal or you own a single trusted firearm, a visit to AROutfitting.com is in order. It's one of the finest online selections of tactical optics and AR parts and add-ons, like EOTech, quick target acquisition with no peripheral loss. Browse the full range of Nikon scopes and binoculars. AROutfitting.com can illuminate your world with Streamlight gun-mounted lights from keychain to large handhelds up to 1,100 lumens. Find some stability with Battenfield tactical bipods. AirOutfitting.com has CMMG gun parts, barrels, assemblies, handguards, part kits, and more, plus mag-full clips and magazines. I know I've got you excited, so take a breath. Head to AirOutfitting.com. The site's super easy to navigate and features a ton of technical info, including links to manuals. We also welcome vendor and manufacturer inquiries. Remember, if you don't see it, we can get it at AirOutfitting.com.
We will not go down in the night without a fight. You can burn up our mosques and our homes and our schools, but our spirit will never die. We will not go down in Gaza tonight.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. And we're going to do the economic news. Apparently, over at the Wall Street Examiner, Lee Adler wrote an article basically accusing the Federal Reserve of lying about inflation and saying that in reality it's frighteningly high. And probably most of you have guessed that when you go to fill up your gas tank or you go to buy food at the supermarket, because both of those early indicators of inflationary pressure are not included in the official U.S. government calculation, or rather the official Federal Reserve calculation of the rate of inflation. And he goes on to say that everything is starting to feel a whole lot like 2008. Everyone's looking sidelong at each other as the market refuses to correct despite a steady stream of negative underlying data. Well, it's because it's being rigged. It's being propped up by the plunge protection team. And it's being used as a political banner. Don't talk to us about the bad economy. The economy's great. Look at the stock market. I think they ended up today as well. Let me take a quick peek, see how that looked. Yeah, the Dow was up 298. The stock market is totally disconnected from the real world economy at this point. Now, the dollar in less than 20 years has lost 80% of its value against gold, or what some people like to describe as real money, because the Federal Reserve note is a fiat currency. It has no commodity backing. The only thing that backs the Federal Reserve note is your eventual slave labor. Now, earlier in the show, I was talking to one of the callers about how Trump's policies toward Iran and his policies toward Europe, forcing them to support U.S. sanctions against Iran, have created a tremendous amount of alienation. And according to the story at Government Slaves, the finance minister in basically they're saying U.S. will not be allowed to be the economic police of the world. So resentment is building up. The rest of the world is tired of being bullied by the United States and just acting like the U.S. rules the world. So let me see where this came from. Okay, this actually came from Press TV. I'm sorry, I misread the headline when I put it up there. Turkey has finished repatriating all of its gold from the U.S. They're getting ready to ditch the dollar. A lot of countries are, and they want to go back to a currency that is backed, at least in part, by gold. China's doing it. Russia's doing it. Looks like Turkey's going to do it. And again, I'm amazed they're able to get their gold out of the U.S. because there's a shortage in those vaults. Now, unfortunately, there's a little wrinkle here because Turkey originally wanted the gold sent back to Turkey. And instead, Turkey repatriated the gold to the Bank of International Settlements, which has a long record of rehypothecation misbehavior. I think Turkey made a very bad mistake, or maybe the U.S. said, we will only repatriate it to the Bank of International Settlements, which means it might not actually be there. Over in France, the finance minister, Bruno Le Maire, is saying that the European Union may compensate European companies hit by U.S. sanctions over Iran. So, and again, they're talking about retaliatory sanctions. This is going to break up the EU-U.S. alliance. Meanwhile, according to Mnuchin, sorry about that, rented lips, the trade war between the U.S. and China is now on hold. Apparently, somebody realized that the U.S. economy does not have the resilience to withstand a trade war, which it doesn't because of all that debt. And we're not yet positioned to have domestic suppliers for a lot of those Chinese products. We have to stop spending all this money on war and start rebuilding our factories. Energy giant Total has now pulled out of the gas development project in Iran and basically confirmed it has not accepted any gas exploration commitments in the southern Pars field. Now, the other partner in this deal is PetroChina, and I would not be at all surprised if they simply come on in and grab the portion of the deal abandoned by Total. So once again, we're seeing how all this hostility toward Iran, the sanctions toward Iran, is literally starting to wall the United States and its allies away from an emerging global commerce. Anytime somebody tells you that the U.S. economy is doing great, you remind them that nearly 51 million households in the United States can't afford the basics like rent and food. People have to go hungry just to pay their rent. That's not a healthy economy. You don't have a healthy economy when wages and salaries are driven down into the basement. You don't have a healthy economy when you have all these homeless people living on the streets. Any objective assessment of our country, walking down, for example, San Francisco, looking around, is going to see this is a nation very clearly in decline. It has bankrupted itself with all this war spending. And even though the United States is outspending the next 7 biggest spenders combined, the military still wants more. And then they waste it, they lose it, they spend it on these incredible boondoggles. And not just the F-35, the Freedom and Independence class littoral combat ships, which have corrosion and drivetrain problems. Apparently, they had a modular weapons system to allow the ships to be reconfigured quickly, depending upon the mission. That never worked out. And now the Navy's just going to discontinue that project and go back to the drawing board. Up in Seattle, the city of Seattle had basically said they were going to cease all business with Wells Fargo because they wanted a bank that reflects its values. And in the end, they've had to go back to Wells Fargo because no other banks in Seattle wanted their business. So liberalism does come with a price. U.S. bank losses to theft have skyrocketed, and the prime culprit is cybercrime. And I find it amazing that while the U.S. government will certainly go after anybody who hacks into government computer systems, that they're not really trying to mount a major project to find the cyber criminals. It's like the banks get hacked, the money gets stolen, the insurance covers it, and everybody goes home happy. Except that the insurance rates go up. 76% of companies that went public in 2017 had negative earnings, the highest level since the peak of the dot-com era. It's not a good business climate in this country right now. Surprisingly, George Soros has come to the rescue of sinking Tesla. Soros Fund Management has invested $35 million in the convertible bonds of Tesla, which are due in March of next year. So Tesla is going to be with us at least a little while longer, and as much as I detest George Soros, I'm glad he did it because I do think electric cars are the way of the future. And I've never been in a Tesla, I've never driven one, but I've seen them close up. Some of the people here on the islands have them. We have these little special parking stalls for electric vehicles where you can recharge while you're shopping. Claire and I, when we had to replace our Honda, we did try and find a hybrid, if not an electric vehicle, but they were too new. We couldn't afford it. But I would have gone that direction. I would have definitely gone that direction. Down in Venezuela, apparently there was a Kellogg factory that had closed, gone out of business. The Venezuelan government has now confiscated it and decided they're going to make their own domestically produced breakfast products in the factory. and control of the factory's been turned over to the workers who used to work there. So yeah, if the building's not doing anything, I'm sure Kellogg's will protest. That's our property. How dare you? But there are a lot of hungry people there in Venezuela right now. Venezuela is in desperate straits right now. In fact, they're unable to pay their military, and as a result, they're having a huge desertion problem in the military. Venezuelan soldiers are deserting in droves. And right now, their monthly pay is worth only about $2 US. So he has, they're talking about this one soldier as an example. He has to moonlight at a tire shop. He's already put in for a discharge. Okay. Now, what is the Shanghai Cooperation Organization? And it is a major player in global geopolitics, strategic agreements, and global economics. The SCO is mostly about Russia and China coming together. And it's more than that. It's basically saying that whoever rules East Europe will rule the heartland. Whoever rules the heartland will rule the world, island. So it's not just an economic partnership. It's a shift in geopolitical power. The center of the world is moving east. There's no question about it. And that's another reason for the U.S. war on the world, to just conquer everybody, bring them all back into Bretton Woods. They want to take the world back to 1950. And the rest of the world is saying, no, they don't want to have it. Now, the Shanghai Cooperative Organization is another organization similar to BRICS. It's all about free trade. It's all about using their own currencies. And basically, it's all about getting out from under the hegemonic domination of the United States dollar. Article coming on out from, hang on, get this cursor here. Zero Hedge again. Brussels is now, they determine, rises in revolt against Washington, a turning point in U.S.-European relations. And again, this goes back to the issue that Trump's attempt to act like he's ruler of the world and ruler of Europe is causing a lot of friction. And pulling out of the Iran deal, throwing more sanctions on Iran, and then demanding Europe go along with it when Europe has already been damaged by existing sanctions against both Iran and Russia. And the European Union economy is under a strain, especially with potential loss of revenue from Great Britain. So this was not at all well thought out. And again, the image of the U.S. government that is going around the world right now is of a bully. Just do what I say. Now, last week we were talking about this coalition between the League and Five Star Movement, and Italy's president is basically expected to confirm this coalition officially, which will mean Italy will have one of the most Eurosceptic governments on the continent. And Brussels is not happy about that. More and more of the nations in the European Union are kind of tired of Brussels. When the EU was started, everybody was told it was just about open borders, the Schengen Agreement, and free trade. We're now knowing that Brussels all along intended to exert this tyrannical control over Europe, leading to federalization. We had that story last week where documents came on out that the British government knew that's where they were heading and kept it away from the British people, in the hope that by the time they found out what was going on, it would be too late to do anything about it. They miscalculated on that one. Even though they now have a new Eurosceptic government, or maybe the new government would help, but there is still a major financial crisis looming in Italy. And if Italy goes down, the Eurozone is so fragile, other countries could get dragged down with it. Apparently, Italian bonds had the worst week since 2015. And there are banks in Italy that have like something like 14 to 15% of their loans are bad. So thank you, European Central Bank. You've done to Europe what the Federal Reserve did to the United States. Italy is forming the epicenter of the EU's fateful shift. This is an article and a headline, again, out of Zero Hedge. Basically saying that with this very Euro-skeptic government now taking power in Italy, that they may become a focal point for other Eurosceptic nations in the EU to basically climb on board and say, yeah, it's time for all of this to be over. I hope we don't see a civil war within Europe, but at this point, everybody's gunning for war and just looking for a target. So Italy's new government is out there saying Italians come first, and they're already saying they're going to rip up the European Union rules. They're going to cut payments to Brussels. They're going to close their borders to refugees. And there obviously will be a confrontation between Brussels and Italy over this. But it's gone on too long, and the Europeans have really suffered at the hands of these New World Order policies. And they really want it to end. Okay, one of the other things that Italy's new coalition government is saying is they're going to drop the Russian sanctions. And they're out there encouraging the rest of the EU to do the same because the EU has suffered greatly under the U.S. sanctions against Russia. We'll be right back after these few words.
Do you know there is an ongoing war right here in America? Are you aware that U.S. citizens have been classified as enemies of the state since 1933? Have you recognized that our entire government is really a vast network of interlocking corporations engaged in commerce? Look up Title 28, Section 3002. Tune in to In Defense of Humanity on Saturday nights at 7 p.m. Central Time. Find out what's really going on and learn how to protect yourself and your family as flesh and blood men and women living in a corporate reality.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Do you or a loved one suffer migraine headaches? Listen to what scientist Kurt Hendricks has to say.
If you are one of the millions of people who get migraines, you need to know about MiGrelief. Hi, I'm Kurt Hendricks, the scientist who created MiGrelief, the patented dietary supplement that addresses nutritional deficiencies in adults and children with migraines. Thousands of physicians and pharmacists recommend MiGrelief.
Call 800-MIG-7354 or visit MIG911.com.
I'm getting older and noticing that my body just doesn't work as well as it used to. So I like to keep fit as possible by hitting the gym a few times a week. Recently, I started having a nagging bicep pain, and it got so bad I couldn't even lift the weights. When I was complaining about it to a friend, he told me about Angioprim. He said chelation helps remove toxins. heavy metals, and cholesterol in veins and arteries that may cause blockages. You know, after just 1 week of taking Angioprim, the pain was gone, and now I'm back in the gym full strength. Scientific research proves the active ingredient in Angioprim has superior oral chelation action that helps promote cardiovascular health. So to learn more, go to angioprim.com. That's ANGIOPRIM.com, or talk to a trained consultant. Call Angioprim toll free at 877-882-7221. You'll feel better with more energy. Call 877-882-7221 or go to the website angioprim.com.
What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. Join Mike on the air. Call toll-free 800-313-9443. 800-313-9443.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And we're going to take a phone call from Tim in Wyoming. Aloha, Tim. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Michael. Thanks for taking my call. I appreciate it. I wanted to mention a couple things. You met when you said about the European Central Bank having essentially destroyed Europe, and you likened it to what the Federal Reserve has done to our country. Now, we're still talking about a fiat system, a fiat currency system that Europe has as well as what we have. How can we wean ourselves away from that? I know that the countries who have, as you said, repatriated their gold from our supposed storehouses here in the United States have decided to walk that way. But how can we do that here? How can we start on our way towards a sound money system, actual specie-based funding instead of funding money, rather?
Yeah, well, the key issue, of course, is that the private central banks, instead of the government coining and issuing the money to buy what they need, then it circulates through commerce, and then it's taxed back at the same amount. Private central banks literally create money out of thin air, and then they loan it into circulation at interest. And that's what has driven both Europe and the United States into unpayable levels of debt. It's impossible to pay off all the debt. Once you're in the grip of a private central bank, you are their debt slaves. Unfortunately, in this country, because the Federal Reserve is basically enshrined in law, it's a legalized counterfeiting operation, we're going to have to wait for the system to collapse. And then as we're forming a new country, the American people need to get on out there and demand no more private central banking.
Okay, how can we get ourselves towards the way of bringing other people to think the proper way? To think, well, I try to educate people every time I hand them a Federal Reserve note. I point out the operative word note on the piece of paper, or the worthless metal slugs that we also use as so-called money. Pointed out to them that there's no value. There's only perceived value, which is the biggest psychological game that's ever been played on the country.
Yes,
on the people, and so I try to hold hands through the basic form of at least getting towards the way of thinking properly about what we should be doing in our country, and I'm not sure that most people are aware that we're basically using something that has nothing of value behind it.
Well, the real problem is not that it has no value, it's that it's accruing interest while it's sitting in your pocket. And that interest gets paid back in higher prices for products, higher taxes. This was exactly the same debt slavery that King George III imposed on the colonies with his Currency Act.
Right.
And that was the primary reason we had the American Revolution. Now, I'm not advocating a new revolution because those things kill a lot of people to no point. But there are some very good videos on YouTube that point out why private central banks really are very bad for the nation and its people. They're good for themselves. Private central banking has made the owners of these banks the wealthiest people on earth.
Right.
Okay. All right. We got to take a break for station. We got to take a break for station identification, and we'll be right back.
Without the right accessories, any guy can be off the mark. Whether you've invested thousands in your arsenal or you own a single trusted firearm, a visit to AROutfitting.com is in order. It's one of the finest online selections of tactical optics and AR parts and add-ons, like EOTech, quick target acquisition with no peripheral loss. Browse the full range of Nikon scopes and binoculars. AROutfitting.com can illuminate your world with streamlight gun-mounted lights from keychain to large handhelds up to 1,100 lumens. Find some stability with Battenfield Tactical Bipods. AirOutfitting.com has CMMG gun parts, barrels, assemblies, handguards, part kits, and more. Plus mag-full clips and magazines. I know I've got you excited, so take a breath. Head to AirOutfitting.com. The site's super easy to navigate and features a ton of technical info, including links to manuals. We also welcome vendor and manufacturer inquiries. Remember, if you don't see it, we can get it at AROutfitting.com.
This is RBN, the Republic Broadcasting Network.
What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero, because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. There's been another example of why the open border refugee policy in Europe wasn't really a good idea. This happened in Austria, and there was this 16-year-old Chechen Muslim has admitted to murdering a 7-year-old girl in Vienna, and his excuse was he was in a bad mood at the time. And he told police he was having a bad day, bad mood, general rage, and he basically stabbed this girl, wrapped her in plastic, and just threw her in a dumpster, and left the feet sticking out, which is how police spotted the body and realized there'd been a murder. Last week, there was a big stink when Donald Trump came on out describing members of the MS-13 gang as animals. Liberals immediately jumped on him and said, "How dare you call illegal immigrants animals?" And Trump had to correct him and said, "No, I'm talking about the MS-13 gang. I wasn't describing all of the illegal immigrants." Pardon me. And then, amazingly enough, some of the liberals came on out trying to defend this vicious gang, saying, you know, there's a spark of divinity in all of us, and just because they're in a gang is, you know, you shouldn't describe them as animals. Well, Trump is right. They are animals. They make the Crips and the Bloods look like choir boys by comparison. And here are just some of what they do. Over in Maryland, there was an MS-13 leader who ordered the beating of a 15-year-old girl with a baseball bat who had been forced into prostitution. Apparently, 2 other Salvadoran nationals were also named in that particular case. Let's see. Oh, this is a good one. Also in Maryland, MS-13 members, a gang of 10, murdered this man by stabbing him more than 100 times, beheading and dismembering him, and cutting out his heart. Apparently, they beat him so badly, police are still having trouble identifying him. Over in New York, MS-13 gang members, some of whom are illegal immigrants, stabbed New York teen girls to death. 2 of them. Five illegal aliens who were part of the MS-13 gang were charged in the brutal murder of a Maryland woman. What is it with Maryland? She was beaten to death and buried in June and found just last September. A female MS-13 gang member told her victim she would see you in hell before stabbing 15-year-old victim 13 times. 4 New York teens brutally beaten to death by an MS-13 gang. And the list goes on and on. But yes, the way they're behaving, I think it's perfectly within reason to say the MS-13 gang are animals when they behave like that. And to hear Nancy Pelosi get up there and try and defend them and say Trump was wrong to say this. There are times when political correctness can go just a little too far. By the way, over in Chicago, in just the past week, over 50 people were shot on the streets of Chicago. The wave of violence seems to be endless, and nothing's being done about it. Thank goodness the law-abiding people of Chicago have been totally disarmed. And I wish there was a global outcry over what's going on in Chicago that matches the outcry over what happened in Gaza. Now, a lot of people questioned the NRA's wisdom in naming former Iran-Contra figure Oliver North to be their new president. But he's already out there saying things people are agreeing with, including me. And he says, guns don't kill people, Ritalin kills people. And so North's official position as president of the NRA is saying these ADHD meds can turn boys into mass shooters. And I still want to know if last Friday's shooter was on these medications. Apparently he stole the guns from his father and yelled surprise when he walked into that art classroom and opened fire. Now, it's claimed that it's unknown whether he was on any prescription medication. Obviously, somebody knows. His doctor, his pharmacist, his parents probably. It's just not being reported. The kid was definitely showing the signs of depression early on, and what may have triggered the shooting was being rejected by a girl for a date. Now, when you're acting normally, you'll be unhappy about that. But when you go onto a violent shooting spree, to me, that says, yeah, pharmaceutically enhanced. We're going to do a shout out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. There is a new hate crime bill protecting police, and it's passed the House, even though it is a clear violation of the 10th Amendment. This is called the Protect and Serve Act, and it has a lot of bipartisan support. And they're basically telling the states that attacks on police will be treated as hate crimes. Now, the House Liberty Caucus opposed the creation of this new federal hate crime, which it said violates the Constitution because the 10th Amendment grants authority to prosecute offenses against state and local cops only to the states. And this is an attempt now to federalize criminal law, which the federal government is not supposed to do. Now, last week we ran a story about how somebody actually looked at the numbers and discovered there really isn't a war on police, that the number of police who are dying in the line of duty is pretty much flat. It was just being hyped up in the media, possibly to support this bill. The same study also found that there is no war on blacks by the police officers. In fact, police are shooting more white people than black people because of the adverse publicity. We're going to take a phone call now from Francis in North Carolina. Aloha, Francis. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, aloha to you both.
Aloha.
Yeah, about these political groups and so forth, nauseam that's going on and who's doing what and Trump, Deepu, and so forth. It prompted me to recall something I run across earlier. Whenever you go on like YouTube or whatever and you're looking up a video or something, and they generally will put up a little window that is trying to sell you something or take you to another link or whatever, I come across something really interesting. I actually come across one that actually talked about, do you think that illegal immigrants should be allowed to put in or receive Social Security benefits and so forth? And the question is, it was such a broad, sweeping question, the way it was worded, it was like, okie dokie, how many ways can this be applied? And so as much as I wanted to respond to it, I put on my brakes because a red light went off in my head. Reason being is that, one, yes, they probably have get some legitimate information from you, but that can either be used for a useful purpose, depending on who the group is that sponsored that, or it can be used against you, depending on how they want to, say, apply it in some way, shape, or form against you to bring harm to you as a result, because they view you as being biased this way or biased that way or whatever have you. And so I come to realize that is something to be avoided when you get prompted with a question like that of something that actually affects everyday people or whatever,
Yes.
for that matter. But from a, I guess they call it cyber point of view or whatever, you don't know where that stuff's coming from. You don't know who is prompting it or setting
Well,
people up for that matter.
I suspect it's a liberal organization because they're trying to just sell this idea that the illegal immigrants are just Americans like everybody else, and they should put into Social Security, which they don't because they're not paying taxes because it's illegal to hire an illegal immigrant in this country. And you know, so this is definitely a liberal organization trying to basically get support for this idea.
Well, I think you have a point there. However, I think it's a little bit more deeper than that. I think it's probably as you call it, a liberal organization or who knows what organization that's being used by one alphabet soup groups to do a little search and seizure or whatever have you of their own to see who stands where and how, whatever have you. So they can get an idea for their data mining and so forth. So I think it's a lot deeper than just a simple organization or whatever that's out to propagate whatever they want to. So that's just my sentiment about it or thought about it.
Well, I imagine they're definitely trying to get data to see how much public support there is for this kind of an idea. But
you're nailing.
Given the way that's phrased, I imagine that probably most conservatives might not click on the website at all. So I'm not sure how accurate the polling data is going to be.
Well, that's true. But then again, who's to say how liberal or how conservative a person actually is out in today's society? There is such a grayscale measure of both terminology that who you would construe as being liberal may just be the complete opposite, and who you consider as being conservative can be just a total opposite. And who knows what's in between those two so-called areas of society. So I just find the whole thing about how people use terminology as far as designated parts of society to be absolutely hilarious, because it's just like a kangaroo court, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
In a matter of speaking. So anyway, just thought I'd pass it by in case somebody happens to see that kind of trap or whatever. It could actually be a trap for them too. That can be used against them.
I think that's getting a little too concerned about that. I mean, we know everything is being surveilled anyway. All right, Francis, thank you for the phone call. We're going to let you go and switch over to the Sovereign Man. Aloha, Sovereign. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
I just wanted to give a shout out to Congressional Representative Alex Munia, West Virginia. He has presented a bill to bring the United States back to the gold and silver standard.
I would love to see that happen. I think I would be surprised if it even made it to the floor.
Yeah, but I mean, that's a little hopeful, isn't it?
I'm tired of getting along on hope. We all hoped Trump was going to keep his campaign promises. We all hope he's going to fix things. I want to see action happening now. I'm not going to get excited about a gold standard until it's actually restored. I'm not going to get excited about election reform until it's actually happening. I'm not going to get excited about vaccine safety until vaccines are actually safe.
Yeah, I agree. But, we can act locally. That you can start implementing things local with yourself and with your community and with the people that you associate with. I think that's key, isn't it?
Well, it's one way of doing it. I mean, during economic downturns during the Civil War, local communities would come up with their own currency. Because the U.S. dollars and the Confederate dollars were considered so unreliable. Both sides were massively counterfeiting each other's currency to try and wreck it.
Yeah, I agree. I would like to reply to Francis. When you go to YouTube, there's an add-on that you can add to your browser. I use Firefox. It's kind of iffy, but it's called AdBlock Plus.
Yes.
That way you don't have to see all those psychometric profiling things that pop up in your face.
Yes.
Oh, blessings to you, Mike.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go here. The phone lines are now open. AdBlock Plus is really good. I use it myself as well. All right, getting on back to PC-ness, as it were. Over at Georgetown, the students hosted a community dialogue on racism, and by asking white allies not to attend. Just to show you how disconnected the politically correct movement has become. They want to have a dialogue on racism, but one race is not allowed to attend. Just think about that for a while here. Evergreen State College, of no whites allowed fame, is slashing its budget, hiking student fees, and planning for layoffs due to plunging enrollment numbers. So the backlash is starting to hit. People are fed up with all this PC nonsense. They're fed up with, men being allowed to use the ladies' room. It's really gone way too far. It's become a caricature of itself. All right, let's take another phone call. Mark in Philadelphia. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yes, Michael. I was wondering, I know that these days we got to pretty much have a license for this and a license for that and a permit for this and a permit for that. I was wondering if you might happen to know if there how I'd go about getting a course and maybe get a license to become a pedophile hunter.
Well, I don't know that there is a separate job like that, but if you wanted to get involved, you might join an organization.
I'm joking.
You were joking. Okay. All right. Oh, you mean like the bag limit kind of a thing? My mistake.
Yeah. So the article here that I'm just reading is the Vatican has paid nearly $4 billion to settle for children harmed by sexual abuse.
Yes.
My gosh. If it isn't bad enough to on the one side we have the Zionist Christians who actually want Armageddon to come quick. Let's have World War III and everybody go in the dark, and of course everybody will be gone, but then the Savior will come and we'll all be saved. And then on the other hand, we have the Vatican where I guess the Pope thinks it's okay to for men who are priests to continue to do what they do. And if you read the depth of this article, they're continuing to hide the names of the priests who formerly, molested children. I mean, isn't that? I'm not Catholic. I'm not even religious, although I come from the Midwest, the belt buckle of the Bible Belt, the same town that John Ashcroft is from, by the way, and he was in the church. He's in the church. His father was a deacon in the Assemblies of God, by the way. I'm not really into religion, and this is kind of the reason why. So I'm wondering, for the people who are out there who are Catholic, how can you go to any of your churches and say that's okay? I mean, it's and then another example. What I learned up in Wilkes-Barre, Scranton area, which was where one of the first priests were confronted with his molestation.
Yes.
And the local authorities didn't investigate. We're talking about the law. The prosecuting attorneys and they didn't investigate. What did they do? Oh, they turned the matter back to the church because the church knows best, and they would handle it. They would do the right thing, right?
Right.
I mean, it's absolutely abhorrible. So, I don't know about you, but this pedophilia is just absolutely outrageous, and I can't.
I agree. I absolutely agree.
Yeah. So.
And by the way, following up on the Vatican's huge cash payout, all of Chile's 34 bishops have now been forced to resign over their sex abuse and cover-up scandal. So it is really out there. There's a movie called The Spotlight that's talking about how this newspaper was put under immense pressure not to report clerical pedophilia when it broke out in their neighborhood. It's a huge problem. Now you got Pope Francis out there saying it's okay to be gay, which I'm fine with that because the gays have enough to deal with as it is. But apparently is now dropping hints that God himself might be gay. So, I mean, the situation is just getting muddied up like crazy.
Well, here's another one. On that same note, do you remember, what was it, back in the 80s, I think, when that group formed by mothers, MAD, I think it was called MAD?
Yeah.
Mothers Against Drunk Driving. I wonder why aren't the mothers getting together and forming a new group? I don't know. We'll have to come up with. I'll work on an acronym for that, for mothers who are against pedophilia.
I think it's a very good idea. Mark, we got to let you go and take a break for commercials. We'll be right back.
Do you or someone you know suffer from chest pain, blood pressure, cholesterol, or irregular heartbeat? Are you looking for a more natural solution to overcome these health challenges? You hear the ads all the time. If this stuff's so good, why doesn't my doctor prescribe it? That's easy. Doctors are not trained in natural medicine. Extendivite Heart Tonic does want you to be as healthy as you can be, and it really works. Take Extendivite for 6 months and your doctor will say, I don't know what you're doing, but don't stop. It's working for you. Get the dependability of Extendivite. Just see how you feel in 6 months. A 2-month supply of either capsules or liquid is only $69.95 plus shipping and handling. Call 1-877-928-8822. That's 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
As a listener of RBN, you're surely concerned about being informed and being ready for whatever may come. Please consider the following questionnaire as a soul-jarring wake-up call. If you answer no to more than 2 of these following questions, you probably aren't going to make it through any major disruption in our country. The questions were compiled by people that have been there. Are you really ready? Do you own your own firearm for the primary defense and protection of you and your loved ones? Have you ever been professionally trained to stand against life-threatening behavior? Have you ever practiced enough to fire 500 rounds during a 2 to 4 day time frame, day and night? Can you load, unload, fire, and clear a jam in total darkness? Have all the adults in your household been professionally trained? Are you, life and death, comfortable with your abilities with pistol, revolver, shotgun, and rifle? Are you aware that everything that you do to prepare for an emergency is a waste of time, money, and energy? If you haven't honed your abilities to their highest level to protect and keep what you have, do you have the repair parts that will most likely be needed for each of your firearm, and do you have the ability to install those parts? Could you completely clean every firearm you own? Are you aware that your body won't go where your mind hasn't been? In other words, without proper training, followed by regular practice, you probably will not win a gunfight. Well, how did you measure up? Take the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to start correcting your deficiencies by receiving your Commander Lifetime Membership with Front Sight Firearms Training Facility. A one-time donation to RBN for $500 will give you a Commander Lifetime Membership at Front Sight as a tremendously huge thank you bonus. See details on RBN's webpage to make it happen. The clock is ticking. You had better be ready before it happens.
What this country is coming to, I sure would like to know. If they don't do something by and by, the rich will live and the poor will die. Doggone, I mean the panic is on. Can't get no way, can't draw no pay.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here, and we're going to go back to the phones. Terry in Long Beach, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, you're wondering if these shooters have been on prescription drugs. Well, I wonder that too, but I also wonder about something else. I know the Zionists are really in with the intelligence agencies like the CIA, and maybe they have some kind of super secret weapon where they can, target somebody that's vulnerable and shoot some kind of electronic signal into their brain to put all these voices in their head.
Well, for the
did you ever wonder about that?
They actually do have a device. It's based on microwaves, and it basically modulates your skull, and you perceive it as sound. So that's been known about for a time. I think that's a little too complicated, and we need to go back to Occam's razor. Certainly for some of these staged false flag shootings, yeah, they're going to look for a vulnerable individual, somebody who's on these prescription psychiatric medications, and they're going to basically groom them, and then basically lead them in to do the shooting. That's why we always have that conflict where right after the shooting, they're going to say there were this many shooters, and then the official story becomes, oh, it was just one or two.
Well, how do they groom them? Do they make direct contact with them, or
oh yeah,
how would they do that?
Yeah, they befriend them. They they hang out with them, and they just talk up this idea about killing, and if the kid's on the medication.
Yeah, well, I always had that thought about the Denver shooting, James Holmes.
Yes,
because he was vulnerable. And he also went into a program, right there that they were studying his neuroscience thing, so they can put all kinds of stuff in his head after that, because he just didn't fit the profile of somebody, to me, a good student and all that sort of thing of, just going off the deep end, but maybe I'm wrong.
Well, no, I mean, we have the same pattern with last Friday's shooter. He'd previously been an honors student, was on the junior varsity football team, and all of a sudden he just started falling apart. And he was exhibiting symptoms of depression. And so at that point, the logical question is, was he prescribed prescription antidepressants? Now, if you go over to ssristories.org, you will see all these case histories of people who were perfectly fine until they were put on these medications, and then they get violent. They beat their spouse. They try and commit suicide. They go on mass shootings. These are very dangerous chemicals, but they make money. And as long as they're making money, nothing will be done about it. Same problem we have with vaccines and GMOs.
Well, I guess they got some kind of cover-up where they won't let people do a full investigation, or there's nobody to do it, because like you say, you can't even find out if he's on drugs. And then to carry that investigation one step further, who was talking to him the last month or so, or 2 months, whatever, and find out what kind of influence they had on him. But we don't have any investigation like that.
No, and there never will be. Actually, prior to Sandy Hook, it was usually mentioned in the news media that the kid had mental issues and he was on prescription medication. And when people started making that link between prescription antidepressants and this sudden explosive behavior from these people, the corporate media stopped reporting it. The pharmaceutical corporations called up and said, don't ever mention that again. In fact, following Sandy Hook, I remember this case where Connecticut citizens, using the Connecticut equivalent of the Freedom of Information Act, wanted to find out what medications that shooter had been on, and they were blocked by the medical examiner's attorney, Patrick Quanachet, who said that even if in this one case the medication led to the shooting, the American people didn't need to know that, as they would stop taking the medications prescribed by their doctors. Now, if you look at Connecticut's economy, a lot of big pharma in there.
Yeah, well, but that's just Connecticut. Maybe, some other state they could do it, but they won't. Maybe there's a federal lobby, a nationwide lobby that is protecting the drug companies, but
yeah, of course there is.
I kind of think it's...
the drug companies have found out it's much less expensive to, buy the media and lobby the government than it is to actually create products that work properly.
Yeah, well, it sounds to me like, the whole goal is to disarm the American citizen.
Absolutely.
And, and when they do that, then look for something that happened in 1917 in Russia, because it might be generations of the same people that are doing it too. You never know.
It's entirely possible. It really
Bolshevik,
is.
Because, in the Talmud it says, goys are put on earth to serve us.
Well, I think you're kind of wandering far afield here right now, and in any event, I've got to let you go because we have to take a break for commercials. We'll be back with more phone calls after these few words.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
Hi, folks. CBD is the home run hitter for health right now. Why, you ask? Because of what it does for the body. Unfortunately, I can't tell you all about the benefit. There's reasons. Do your due diligence and log on to ancientlifeoil.com. That's ancientlifeoil.com. Ancient Life Oil uses organic ingredients and is blended in coconut oil for some of the best benefits. Legal in 50 states and non-psychoactive. Log on to ancientlifeoil.com. That's ancientlifeoil.com.
Do you worry a lot? Whether you're a college student, busy professional, parent, or grandparent, ongoing stress and elevated levels of the stress hormone cortisol can rob your memory, your health, and your future. Now you can combat the effects of stress and anxiety while improving your memory and recall at the same time with the dietary supplement Calm and Clever. Studies show that the ingredients in Calm and Clever reduce cortisol by as much as 30% in 1 to 2 weeks. Call 1-800-758-8746 or calmandclever.com.
This is too good to be true, except this time it is real. 100%. No joke. How about a $25,000 membership to Front Sight Firearms Training Facility as a thank you bonus for a one-time donation to RBN of only $500? It is a Commander lifetime membership with no yearly fees or dues. The training is free for the rest of your life with over 50 different classes. Then leave it to your designated beneficiary. You provide the approved firearm, holster, ammo, eye, and ear protection. Many features and bonuses are included, more than you would ever expect or believe. This is the ultimate graduation present, wedding gift, etc., etc. See the details. Go to RBN's webpage and frontsight.com to make it happen. May 5th is the last day you will hear this offer on this radio network. Help keep RBN alive. Tell 5.
Do you know there is an ongoing war right here in America? Are you aware that U.S. citizens have been classified as enemies of the state since 1933? Have you recognized that our entire government is really a vast network of interlocking corporations engaged in commerce? Look up Title 28, Section 3002. Tune in to In Defense of Humanity on Saturday nights at 7 p.m. Central Time. Find out what's really going on and learn how to protect yourself and your family as flesh and blood men and women living in a corporate reality.
Some are maxed out all their credit cards. Some are working 2 jobs and living in cars. Minimum wage won't pay for a roof, won't pay for a drink. If you gotta have proof, just try it yourself, Mr. CEO. See how far $5.15 an hour will go. Take a part-time job at one of your stores. I bet you can't make it here anymore.
And Aloha America, welcome back to our show here. We're going to take a few more phone calls, then we're going to close the lines because I still got a lot of news to get through here. Let's go to Charlie in Los Angeles. Aloha, Charlie. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, I was wondering, did you like that idea when North said that Ritalin killing
Yeah,
people,
well,
not guns.
you know, obviously I agree with him on that issue. And he's obviously taking his new job as president of the NRA very seriously.
Okay. To me, it sounds, a little insidious what happened over the years. The psychiatric industry is basically Zionist, and they put every other white male on Ritalin in the last how many years. So what it sounds like to me is they're being very clever here. This mental health aspect that we're hearing in the gun control campaign, they're going to, if you've ever been on Ritalin and the psychiatric industry knows who's been on it, they're just going to take your guns. And I think it's not going to be too long. People are going to be able to figure this out. It's not that,
Well,
it's a little
there's an
obvious
issue there. There's
that
an
every
issue
other
there. I
white
mean,
male-
once you're off the Ritalin, you're going to be fine. It's while you're on these medications or while you're withdrawing from them that you are at risk. Now, in the case of last Friday's situation, apparently this kid stole the shotgun and .38 revolver from his father. I guess they weren't locked up solid enough, and probably the parents had no reason to think they needed to be. But again, this has all the hallmarks of being, exacerbated by a prescription antidepressant.
That's if that's what really happened, and that's what the television tells us what happened.
I think
And
last
so if you're gonna
Friday's
have a
I think the
gun
last
control
Friday's shooting
campaign-
was a legitimate one. I think it was the kid just flipped on out. It doesn't feel like it was a staged incident, but obviously the gun grabbers are already all over it, saying we've got to have gun control, gun control. The irony being that only a few days before there had been an attempted shooting at a school that was stopped cold by an armed guard. And the lesson there is obvious. The only way to stop bad people with guns are good people with guns.
Well, I think if you've been on Ritalin in your life, I think you're going to find out that if they get their way, you're going to have to turn them in, or you'll be forced with a felony charge against you. Thanks for taking my call.
All right, thanks an awful lot here, and I don't think being on psychiatric medication justifies a lifetime ban on guns, but who knows what the gun grabbers are going to ask for. Okay, let's go to Scott in California. Aloha, Scott. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Michael, I'll make it quick. That Holmes guy, that was that Aurora, Colorado thing, and he was found sitting out in his car, just sitting there after the shooting.
Yes.
And then this emergency room nurse called up a local radio station the next day, one of these call-in type stations.
Yep.
And she said that these kids who were coming in, they were reporting 2 or 3 shooters wearing black fatigues. And then a day or two after that, I caught this. I paid attention to it. She was dead, single car accident. So they got, whoever their contractors are, they're sticking around the area for a few days cleaning up loose ends. Anyway, I'll let you go. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, well, we saw something that looked a lot like the same following the Mandalay Bay shooting, where people who are out there insisting that they'd seen gunmen other than the designated location met with strange fates. Okay, we're going to take one more phone call. Richard in Alabama. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
I think in spite of their guilty pleas, that some of these crazy shooters might be innocent. Let me tell you how they could do it. Consider these drugs: ecstasy, pentothal, the handcuff drug, hyoscine, the truth drug, rohypnol, the forgetfulness drug, and scopolamine, suggestibility drug. With these drugs, anybody can be hypnotized. Anybody. They can be put in front of a video screen, high def, and forced to watch a video game. A perfect avatar of the crazy shooter can be made, a perfect image, and inserted into the video game. And they can also insert a controller, the avatar that looks like some real law enforcement officer who, a real person who will be the controller after they're trained. So they start off the video game, and every time the avatar or the crazy shooter makes a mistake or disobeys the controller, he gets a nasty shock. But if he obeys and if he succeeds in his mission, then he gets a dose of euphoria, serotonin.
Well, again, you're making this more complicated than it needs to be. I mean, what you're describing is come right out of Clockwork Orange, and it's entirely possible these things can be done. But I think it's probably brought about much more simply, in part because I don't think it needs to be that complicated. I really don't. Now, again, it may be that the patsies in the staged shootings aren't even the real shooters. Just like we know that the Tsarnaev brothers at the Boston Marathon, they were not the actual bombers. Somebody else did that, and they were given the blame in the corporate media. When the Colorado shooting took place, witnesses saw 5 shooters there. And then when it was all over, there were just 2 shooters who were both conveniently dead. One of the hallmarks of a staged mass shooting is the mass shooter is not alive to defend themselves afterwards. And that's why I think last Friday was actually the real deal. Just a kid with mental problems, got turned down by a girlfriend, stole his father's guns, brain half melted on prescription psychiatric medication, and he just went on a shooting spree.
Well, this doesn't explain all of them, but it could explain a large number of them, maybe half of them.
Well, again, I think you're making it gratuitously complex. So thank you for the phone call, Richard. We're going to let you go. We're going to close the phone lines. I need to get back and get some actual news out here. We're finishing up on political correctness here. And according to the New York Times, there have been studies that show the disparity between male and female characters in films, TV shows, and ads. And so screenwriter and feminist activist Christina Hodson has come up with a new piece of screenwriting software which will make sure that whatever script you're writing includes as much dialogue and action from women as it does from men. Now, I worked in Hollywood for a long time. I was even briefly a writer. I had some screenplays optioned, nothing actually produced. Got one screenplay ripped off. There have been efforts to have computers assist in the screenwriting process, especially for series television, and it doesn't really work on out because computers obviously are not human beings. They don't identify with human beings. They don't share experiences with human beings, and therefore they cannot write about the human experience. Now, this piece of software isn't doing the actual writing, but it's filtering what is being written. And I'm predicting that this piece of software is basically going to put out junk that nobody's going to want to watch. Especially, people are PC'd out. They've really had it with all of this stuff. And they really want it to go away. They want to go back to where men are men and women are women. There are differences that we are born with, and we just, we don't judge on the basis of it, but we don't pretend those differences don't exist. That's just plain silly. Continuing on the subject of computers here, Samsung has come out with a new TV commercial poking fun at the iPhone. And the commercial is basically promoting the launch of the 128 gigabyte and 256 gigabyte editions of the Galaxy S9. Boy, that is a lot of memory. And the commercial is basically showing an iPhone owner with an older iPhone, and it's slowing way, way down. And they get frustrated and they get upset. And it's a perfectly appropriate thing for Samsung to do because Apple did get caught slowing down the iPhones. And their excuse is it's to lengthen battery life, but most people think it's just a marketing ploy to get you to buy the newer iPhone. Oh, this thing is so slow. I'm going to go on down to the store and I'm going to buy a new hot-rodded iPhone. Following up on the so-called Spectre vulnerability, experts are now warning there's a new Super Spectre bug, and it uses a flaw in the chip, or an NSA mandated backdoor, take your pick, to access all the secrets stored on a machine. And security researcher Yuri Buligin, who was until last year Intel's chief threat researcher, says hackers can exploit the infamous chip flaw to gain access to all the secrets stored on a machine. Now, Intel is issuing patches, but the patches slow down your computer, so you're not getting the computer you paid money for. And I think for similar flaws to have been found on so many different chips, I don't agree that it's just a flaw in the chip design. I think it's a hardware backdoor. Story coming out of Blacklisted News here. There's a new report out. Actually, this came from TechDirt, and it's confirming there are deep flaws in the automated facial recognition software being used by Great Britain, and they caution against its use here in the United States. Now, this isn't just comparing a single image with a database. These systems are literally scanning the crowd to obtain and analyze huge numbers of facial images in real time. It's kind of like Minority Report, only without the I part. Huge invasion of privacy, but the problem is these systems have a ridiculously high level of false positives. South Wales Police had encountered during the automated facial recognition software. And before that, a post noted a similarly unacceptable failure rate of automated systems used by the Metropolitan Police in London of last year. These systems do not work, and innocent people are being harassed by the police because they happen to look close enough to a known suspect that the computer says they're the same. They tried facial recognition a couple of years ago at the Miami airport to look for terrorists, and they got the same thing. They harassed a lot of totally innocent people, and they didn't catch a single terrorist. Over in the Congo, officials are getting very, very worried about this latest Ebola outbreak, because up until now, Ebola outbreaks have always tended to happen deep in the jungle where there is a natural barrier preventing its spread, where the illness just burns through its course in these remote villages, and people from there don't make it out to civilization. Unfortunately, that's not true any longer. There's a case of Ebola that's been confirmed in the city of Mbandaka, a city of 1.2 million people. And it's the first time Ebola has ever landed on a city that sits directly on the Congo River. Now, the Congo River is basically the region's highway system. It's full of barges and boats, travel from Kisangani in the east through the major cities, including Bumba and eventually Kinshasa, the capital of the Congo, and home to more than 11 million people. So they're moving very rapidly. They're trying to isolate potential carriers. But yeah, this could get very, very nasty. Out in California, following a long legal fight, an appeals court is saying California can list the herbicide glyphosate as a carcinogen. Now, California passed a law requiring this, and Monsanto basically fought tooth and nail in the court system to keep you, the public, from knowing that that stuff you're spraying on your rose bushes could give you cancer. So again, we live in a society where dangerous, bad products are allowed to be sold as long as it's making its manufacturer enough money where they can buy the media and buy the politicians. Now, along similar lines here over at Global Research in Canada, they have an article about how all of a sudden children seem to be sicker than they used to be. And I've seen the same thing myself. I look back on my own childhood, hardly anybody got sick. We'd go through that measles and mumps thing once. But this article is saying that the problem here is outdated medical models that struggle with chronic diseases and overlook the impact that the food we eat has on us. And people are still talking about the safety of genetically modified foods and their associated pesticides. And more parents are discovering that they can get their children healthy again simply by changing their diet. But there are a lot of chemicals in processed food, manufactured food. You ought to read those ingredient labels sometimes. And I know the type is very, very tiny, but just whip out that little magnifying glass on your Swiss Army knife and just look through those. And Claire and I, when we're shopping, if I see a lot of chemical names, we don't buy the product. And as soon as somebody has that app out to read the new QR code for GMO labeling, we're going to get that. Because it is very obvious to these food corporations, to Monsanto, that our health is simply not a factor. It's not important. In fact, it's a double brand of brothers. The food industry and Monsanto make us chronically ill. We go to the medical industrial complex and spend a lot of money trying to get better on things that really do not work. Now, there's been a big problem here over at Patrick Air Force Base where military families living on the base, their children are getting sick. And it turns out that the Air Force wasn't being very careful with where they disposed their toxic waste. They just dumped it on open land where military housing was later built. And the kids play in the dirt, as kids do. They play in the mud, and they're coming down sick. All right, we're going to take another break for commercials. Back with the last segment of our program after these few words.
Homeowners, if your lender has gone out of business or sold your transaction to another lender or servicer, you may be the victim of a wrongful foreclosure, resulting in the loss of your home. If you've already lost your home, are in foreclosure, or even in good standing, you can challenge the mortgage transaction's illegal issue, and your property can be restored to you, and your foreclosure can be stopped or reversed, and the mortgage transaction declared unenforceable. State laws, U.S. title codes, the Uniform Commercial Codes, and U.S. Supreme Court rulings have upheld that defective mortgage documentations can reverse or stop foreclosures and enforce property title claims in favor of the homeowner. We are having successes in stopping the process of foreclosure, the enforcement of the foreclosure judgments, the sale of property, and evictions after the sale. We are not attorneys, and we don't give legal advice. We are a professional team of legal researchers, providing forensic mortgage audits and expert witnesses. We have the knowledge to produce the evidence and enforce laws regarding your legal issues. We've been in business for 12 years without a complaint. Consultations are free, and we provide a free title search to confirm if your mortgage has legal defects. Please call 855-253-3748. 855, 2, keep it today.
Without the right accessories, any guy can be off the mark. Whether you've invested thousands in your arsenal or you own a single trusted firearm, a visit to AROutfitting.com is in order. It's one of the finest online selections of tactical optics and AR parts and add-ons, like EOTech, quick target acquisition with no peripheral loss. Browse the full range of Nikon scopes and binoculars. AROutfitting.com can illuminate your world with Streamlight gun-mounted lights from keychain to large handhelds up to 1,100 lumens. Find some stability with Battenfield tactical bipods. AirOutfitting.com has CMMG gun parts, barrels, assemblies, handguards, part kits, and more, plus mag-full clips and magazines. I know I've got you excited, so take a breath. Head to AirOutfitting.com. The site's super easy to navigate and features a ton of technical info, including links to manuals. We also welcome vendor and manufacturer inquiries. Remember, if you don't see it, we can get it at AROutfitting.com.
Do you or a loved one suffer migraine headaches? Listen to what scientist Kurt Hendricks has to say.
35 million people in the United States suffer with debilitating migraines. If you or a loved one are one of them, you need to know about MigraLief. Hi, I'm Kurt Hendricks, the scientist that formulated and patented the MigraLief migraine formula. MigraLief is a non-prescription dietary supplement recommended by neurologists, pharmacists, and pediatricians to address nutritional deficiencies in both adults and children over 2 with migraines. Try MigraLief for 3 months and see the powerful difference it can make in your life, or get your money back, no questions asked. Go to MIG911.com or call 800-MIG-7354. You can change your life today.
So if you suffer from migraines, don't wait. Call 800-MIG-7354. That's 800-MIG-7354 or visit MIG911.com.
We will not go down in the night without a fight. You can burn up our mosques and our homes and our schools, but our spirit will never die. We will not go down in Gaza tonight.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, last segment of our program on this Monday. And it's time to give you an update on our local news, meaning the volcano. The lava flowing out of the rift area is starting to speed up because now we're starting to see the new, very hot, much more liquid lava basically chasing the last of the old lava that's just been lying down there since a previous eruption. It's chasing it on out of there. So the lava flow has increased. It's running a lot more rapidly across the ground. There's been one injury reported now. So far, everybody's been safe, but one injury. Somebody got a little too close to the volcano, was hit in the leg with what's called a lava bomb, meaning a rock, and it broke his leg. So again, if you're actually here in Hawaii and you want to see the volcano, watch it from a safe distance. It is an active volcano. It has been for a lot of years. And there are safe ways to see it and unsafe ways, obviously. So there's a lot of gases coming on out from the volcano. Right now, today, we have the trade winds, so it's blowing off to the southwest and away from the rest of the islands. But residents on the Big Island are being advised to prepare for rapid changes in air quality. And they're warning about increased levels of sulfur dioxide. Now, we've now had 3 of these giant ash eruptions at Kilauea. And the first one was the largest. Looking at it from a distance objectively, it would almost seem like it's kind of winding down bit by bit. But volcanologists are still out there saying there is still they think, a big one coming. But even the volcanologists admit they're not really sure. It's not like they have X-ray eyes and can actually see down into the ground with what the magma chamber and all those lava tubes are actually doing. Maybe what they're thinking is they don't want people to start relaxing and say, well, this one's over and we can go back in. They're definitely saying, no, it's not over. It's going to go on for a very, very long time. I think we're now up to something like 22 fissures, and a new one opened up in Lower Puna. Most of them are still spewing lava. A few of them have quieted down. But experts are saying this could go on for weeks. Volcanologist Janine Krippner of Concord University in West Virginia said, there's just so many variables. It's complicated like a bad Facebook relationship status, which I think is kind of a weird way to describe an active volcano. But everybody's looking back at the eruption of 1924, which started out with similar conditions at Kilauea. And there were more than 50 distinct explosions of ash and rock and dust. Latest problem we're having to deal with is called Lays. First there was Vog, now it's Lays because some of the lava has reached the ocean, it's pouring on in, reacts with the salt water, and puts out a new round of noxious chemicals. Okay, there's the music. Time for me to get out of here and get something useful done with the rest of the day. Please remember that the Frontside Academy promotion has been extended to June 2nd. Stay tuned for John Stedmiller. I'm sure he's got a lot of interesting information to share with you. Please take what you learn here, share it with everybody, face-to-face conversations, email. Don't bother wasting time on social media. So we'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.